We've got another week of data in, so you know what time it is. It is time for the SPAGS Rankings. We will determine who has, oh man, I'm spitting already. We will determine who's got a superior player, who's got a great spot. We're going to talk about it all. We're going to rank every single player lovingly using the data that I look at, of course, from Sports Info Solutions, from Pro Football Reference, all of that compiled together into one beautiful spot. You can see our QBs are already on the screen here, so let's get into it. Let's start it alphabetically. I think we don't need to start with Aaron Rodgers. We know that he is in a not great spot. So let's just put Aaron Rodgers here. Let's get him out of the way. Anthony Richardson, of course, coming off of the injury. Let's see if his numbers have improved, where last week I didn't put him safely in the great spot category because of the red zone usage he's getting, because of the overall rushing usage. And you did not perform above average overall in terms of the metrics that I look at. So that was a tough one for me. In terms of what he put on tape in week 2, of course, where he only played about a quarter and a half of football, negative 0.16 EPA per pass, negative 0.1 EPA per drop back. Under pressure, still a negative 0.6 EPA. Those are not fantastic numbers from AR, but the red zone work is still there in a major way. 7 rushing attempts per game. Again, despite missing about 3/4 more than that of the last game for him. So I think the spot for Anthony Richardson, still not quite a superior player, still definitely more of a great spot, but we're getting closer. So I will put AR safely in the great spot category. Shout out to the chat as well. Of course, I am fucking missing it, man. I am so exhausted. The baby is not sleeping. So my apologies if I'm even more mush-mouthed than usual, but shout out to the chat here, starting off hot. Let's keep it going. Fuck, man. This is going to be a long video. If you guys watched last week's video, 2.5 hours, my goal is to get this safely under 2, if not an hour and a half, but we got to rank everybody. So let's make sure I'm doing it right. And eventually I'll be able to talk. I think that's how this normally goes. Brock Purdy, 0.1 EPA per pass, 0.14 EPA per drop back. Completion rate overall looking good. Catchable ball rate, 78%, which is actually closer to average than you would think based upon how good Brock Purdy has been. Air yards per game, actually pretty low as well, not going really downfield, allowing his guys to do things after the catch to get there. Brock Purdy, to me, I think still in a great spot because of the team. Superior player-wise, kind of a come-down week for him going against the Rams. So Brock Purdy, to me, I think still closer to a superior player, but I'm going to go right around AR. I don't think he's quite average. I don't think he's quite in the middle tier, but he is certainly a player who I will say in a good situation, a good player. Brock Purdy fits all of that. Shout out Jim here. GM King Spags. Thank you. Of course, I'm acting very kingly here as I mush my words and scare off anybody who's trying to just check in the thumbnail. They see Justin Fields lying on the ground there and they go, let me check this guy out. And they come in here and I'm spitting all over myself. In a day. Bryce Young could not have impressed me less. I, of course, put out a tweet saying that the Bryce Young pick over Anthony Richardson, and to a lesser extent, CJ Stroud, harkens back to Bowie over Jordan, harkens back to Odin over Durant. I am not a Bryce Young believer so far. There are some positive metrics out there. He is pretty good when he's getting wide open throwing windows, but most QBs should be good when they're getting wide open throwing windows. So for Bryce Young, also a report coming out, he isn't even allowed to do QB sneaks because he's too small. So Bryce Young, I am not impressed with overall. Negative 0.4 EPA per pass, negative 0.3 EPA per drop back, which is one of the worst marks in the league. So he's actively losing value. And then the eyeball test for Monday night, I just felt like he was not quick enough to pull the trigger. I was not impressed. I am currently thinking mid player. I am currently thinking closer to a mid spot. I'll put him in the middle, though, to kind of couch it, but I am not impressed. Definitely closer to the mid-player side for what I'm seeing from Bryce Young. Again, especially when you have Stroud, who's looking like one of these quintessential pocket passers. When you have AR, who's the mobility guy, along with the ability, I think, to build more as a passer. I am very worried about Bryce Young and the shares that I have them overall. You think it's more a testament to how bad the Panthers wide receivers are? They look so slow. So somebody was arguing with me about this on Twitter, and I agree the Panthers receivers aren't great, though. You know, Terrace Marshall, I think, is good, and unfortunately, he's not the one getting snaps at all. They're instead throwing it to Adam Thielen. The issue, though, is like the Panthers made additions. They added free agent wide receivers. They added the top-paid free agent running back. They added a free agent tight end. They drafted Jonathan Mingo. So they did what they thought was the right thing to get talent in at receiver. So I think, like, I don't know. Like, obviously, we don't agree that those players are the best, though Chark was actually okay for whatever he did play for Detroit last year. Mingo, I don't love, though. Thielen, I don't love. So they made the effort to get talent in. They just didn't get great talent. So I don't know how you parse that out, but I do think it's a bad reflection on everybody, bad reflection on the organization. I'm not sure I'm a believer in the Panthers overall kind of ethos, what they're doing. CJ Stroud, one of the guys, of course, that I've been hyped to see already improving right before our eyes. Still negative 0.06 EPA per pass, negative 0.07 EPA per drop back. You would like to see him be in the positive on those. When he's pressured, he's absolutely falling apart. A negative 1.4 EPA when being pressured. Only taking 2 deep shots per game, which is not fantastic. That is, I would think, a strength for him, despite only the 2 deep passes per game. Of course, throws with 20-plus air yards. That's what I track. Negative 0.2 EPA on those throws, so he's not creating crazy value there yet. That said, I think CJ Stroud, not quite a mid player. I do think he is a little bit better than mid. I think the spot, though, being able to drop back 52 times in a game, or 53.5 times in a game, actually, that's a pretty steep number for CJ Stroud. So just the opportunity of being able to drop back that many times, I think bodes well for Stroud. So I'm going to put him slightly better than average here, but I do think, and he should be down a little bit more. He's got to show more as a passer in terms of the accuracy, in terms of creating value. But as anybody who's played Nico Collins, anybody who drafted him in best ball can attest, Nico's getting there, I think, on the strength of CJ Stroud. I don't think Nico is some outlier player. I think Stroud's making him an outlier player. So that deserves some credit for CJ Stroud. So that's why he's going to go there. I like Stroud stacks this week versus the Jags. I think that's in play. The Jags D, again, 2 straight weeks of looking pretty tough. So maybe not an ideal matchup, but we'll certainly talk more about the matchups coming up later in the week. And of course, if you missed yesterday, what we're doing now, Tuesday's best ball review, Wednesday's SPAGS Rankings, Thursdays will be Showdown. And then Friday, we'll do the fantasy football gauntlet where I'll do all the lineup building. I'll do the underdog drafts. I'll do the pick 'em slip. I'll do the prop betting, all that stuff. So that's going to come up on Friday. And we'll talk about all the games through that lens coming up. Dak Prescott, let's talk about him as fast as we can. 32 dropbacks per game. That's not great, though the Cowboys have been in control for both their games for the most part. 0.2 EPA per pass looking pretty good. 0.22 EPA per dropback. So he's adding value when he's dropping back and turning it into a run play. When he's pressured, negative 0.06 EPA actually looks pretty good. Only getting pressured 10 times per game, which is also towards the lower end. So no pressure, performing well under pressure. That bodes well for Dak Prescott. Not taking many deep shots, which of course I do like to see as a way that you kind of have a higher fantasy ceiling, higher fantasy floor when you're just going through the motions of taking deep shot. But this is a Dallas offense that does not quite want to do that. Definitely wants to play it closer to the vest. So I'm going to say Dak. The efficiency is good. He's playing well with it. I don't think it's a great spot because I don't think Dallas wants to press. I'm going to put him kind of in the middle here. I think he's playing better than Brock Purdy right now, just relative to what he's put out there in terms of the advanced analytics. That said, I just don't think Dallas is going to force this downfield the same length. I think it's also something, too, where Dallas is happy to kind of win games, keep it close to the vest, keep it in pocket, whereas the Niners do feel like they want to put up points. It does seem like a team that's more inclined to kind of push the ceiling more so. So I think you can make the case that Brock Purdy, again, in a better spot than Dak, even though Dak, I think, getting better results overall. Had Collins on my bench the last 2 weeks, lighting it up. Now I got Watson coming back. I have no idea what to do. I mean, I would still play Christian Watson, but obviously I'm in the bag for Christian Watson as much as anybody, and certainly I'm a believer based on what we've seen. But we'll look at Jordan Love's stats, and we can make a decision then. Daniel Jones, 43.5 dropbacks per game, negative 0.3 EPA on all his pass plays, negative 0.2 EPA per dropback. He's getting pressured almost 20 times a game, which looks like the worst mark in the league. That is not good for him. He's acquitted himself a league average level, negative 0.9 EPA per pressure dropback, so that's okay. 2.5 deep shots per game, not great, though he is doing a positive EPA on those, 0.4. He's still running 11 times a game, so I think that's what really is going to make Daniel Jones more of a great spot. I'm not impressed by him as a player so far. Obviously, fantasy-wise, I think going to be a little bit of a different thing than just the pure football of it, but I do think we are pretty close to a great spot here, just running a lot. Honestly, he should be pretty much right on top of AR. I feel like not quite as good of a player in my mind. I know it might be blasphemy to some people out there. I think AR is going to keep improving, whereas Daniel Jones, I think we're getting what Daniel Jones is. Derek Carr, guy who looked god-awful on Monday night, still okay overall relative to everything. 39 dropbacks per game, negative 0.05 EPA per pass, negative 0.04 EPA per dropback, getting pressured 15.5 times per game. That's not the best, but he's acquitting himself well with a negative 0.4 EPA there. Again, pressure dropbacks are going to be negative numbers for the most part, so what you want to see, guys, limiting the damage overall, and it does seem like Derek Carr doing an okay job limiting the damage. Where Carr is excelling, though, is on the deep shots. 5 deep shots per game, which is one of the better marks in the league. 1.01 EPA on those plays. Certainly certainly like to see that. That bodes well for the fantasy upside of guys like Chris Olave, who's been good to start. Rashid Shaheed, who's shown some flashes as well. Michael Thomas, maybe if he can get downfield a little bit more. Not a lot in the rushing game, 3 rushes per game, but still something. Derek Carr, I don't think a superior player, doesn't run enough, but I think he's in a pretty good spot. This is a Saints team that's going to press the ball downfield for the most part. And I think that bodes pretty well for him. So not as good as Dak, not as good as Brock, not as great of a spot because he's not running like Daniel Jones and ARR. But I do think Derek Carr, pretty good situation overall in terms of creating fantasy value. And in particular, if you have his Saints stack partners, I think that bodes pretty well to have some upside weeks. Deshaun's got to be a controversial one coming up here because he has not played well overall, has added some value on the ground. 42 dropbacks per game, negative 0.44 EPA per pass, negative 0.35 EPA per dropback. That is really bad. He's creating mistakes when he drops back. 15.5 pressure dropbacks per game, and he's really playing poorly when he's pressured. Negative 1.4 EPA on those plays. You got to think the pressure rate's going to pick up without the threat of Nick Chubb. The Browns did sign Kareem Hunt, which surprises me because they literally bashed him to the media this offseason, said they had no interest in bringing him back. Now, desperate times, desperate measures. So he knows the offense are bringing him back in. They still did say yesterday, though, that Jerome Ford is the lead back there. But I don't think either of these guys are Nick Chubb. So that's kind of the main thing to reflect it back in Deshaun. I don't think it's a great spot for him. The thing that is going to be probably boding pretty well is going to be the run plays. He also does take 4.5 deep shots per game, has been not great with him. He's running 5.5 times per game. Not a ton of success, that only a 0.07 EPA. I think Deshaun is kind of in the middle here where he should seize some more opportunity because of Nick Chubb being out, but also it's just going to be uglier opportunity overall where that threat of Nick Chubb, like you saw what he did on Monday night before he got hurt. Obviously, you've seen what he's done over the last few years where teams really have to account for him, his ability to make things work in the run game. I think that's where Deshaun's going to be lacking. But then because of that, there's just going to be less of a need to feed a running back 15 to 25 touches a game. So it opens up more opportunity for Watson. I think you got to kind of plant a flag to see like what he's going to do. I don't know if more Deshaun is going to be a good thing for the Browns, though. I do have to say that right away. Desmond Ridder performed okay fantasy-wise this previous week, but still not a player that I think is going to grade out too well, but we'll see what the numbers say. 30.5 dropbacks per game, negative 0.03 EPA per pass, positive EPA per dropback. So that's a little bit surprising. The Arthur Smith offense, not the most exciting for fantasy, but does look like it's doing pretty well for Desmond Ridder. 10.5 pressure dropbacks. He is performing pretty poorly when that happens. Negative 0.8 EPA per dropback when he is getting pressured. Only 2.5 deep shots per game, but he's getting 1.2 EPA on those plays. So he actually is converting those pretty well. I don't expect him to keep completing 80% of his deep throws. But that does look better for Ridder than you certainly would think. And he's now up to 5.5 rushes per game. So this is surprising. I don't think he's a superior player. I think he's kind of in between these two. No, he's got to go behind Carr, right? I think let's move Carr a little bit closer. Ridder, though, having some rushing upside, having a functional offense, better than I would have hoped for him, especially after week 1 where he just didn't look like he had much juice at all. He's got to feed Drake London. He's got to feed Kyle Pitts. He has to get whatever he can out of Mac Hollins. But Ridder, I am shocked to say, I think closer to a great spot, if not a superior player. That is one that definitely looks pretty good. Then we may get in some player takes from the same place. There we go. The guys debating player takes in the chat. Always love to see it here. Of course, I'm focused. I'm focused on getting this video to a reasonable length, even though we're already fucking 15 minutes in and I've done like 5 quarterbacks. We're going to make it work. Geno Smith, 37 dropbacks per game. Things looked a lot better from him in week 2 than it did in week 1. He's now up to a 0.14 EPA per pass, 0.12 EPA per dropback. When he's pressured, he's doing incredibly well. Only a negative 0.16 EPA on a pressure plays, 13.5 of those for him a game. He's also got a 7.4% touchdown rate when pressured. So definitely acquitting himself well when pressure's coming his way. Deep throws, not a lot of them, 2.5 per game, only a 0.3 EPA. Running 2 times per game, so not a lot of value there. Geno, the lack of rushing upside, I do expect the rushing numbers to uptick a little bit because he has been a little bit more willing rusher. But I think kind of in middle of the tier spot, not a mid spot, more of a middle spot. But I think he's playing pretty well. So I'm going to put him above Deshaun. The pressure stuff, honestly, I'm going to put him safely above Deshaun. Handling pressure that well is a really good sign for Geno. Obviously 2 weeks, but we'll see how that continues to go. Jalen Hurts, what is he doing? Jalen Hurts, 34.5 dropbacks per game, still a negative 0.14 EPA per pass, negative 0.16 EPA per dropback. So we wanted to see him get better this week. And numerically, even though he had a great fantasy game, he really was not that great in any of the EPA metrics. 11 pressured dropbacks per game, negative 0.6 EPA on those plays, taking 5 deep shots per game. So that's opened up a little bit, 0.3 EPA overall on those, which is okay, a little bit better than average. 10% touchdown rate on deep throws, 10.5 rushes per game. So still a great spot, but I think not quite as superior of a player. I think he is firmly in this Daniel Jones, Anthony Richardson tier right now. It's going to get better, but we're just talking about guys with what they've put on tape so far, what they've put on the numbers so far. I know Jalen Hurts is going to be like, you want to see him in that top right corner. I get it, but I don't think I could put him there yet. He's got to make some improvements here. And you still have some questions still about Jalen Hurts and just, this changeover on offense, new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator as well. All that stuff, the defensive side doesn't affect Jalen Hurts, but the offensive side certainly can. Okay. I'm just going to say, Toast, I appreciate you, bud. If anybody in chat wants to answer them, but I can't answer these. I'm not doing these right now. It's too long of a video as it is, but appreciate everybody who comes in looking for anybody on YouTube to answer their fantasy questions. Unfortunately, hopefully the chat can help out. Jared Goff, let's talk about him. Negative 0.06 EPA per pass on 36.5 dropbacks per game. Negative 0.08 EPA per dropback overall. So Jared Goff, numerically not performing above average so far, but I guess that's not a crazy surprise with what he's done fantasy-wise. When he's getting pressured, looking pretty bad. 10.5 overall pressure dropbacks. Negative 0.7 EPA on those pressured plays. 2.5 deep throws per play. He's a negative EPA guy there. Just a little bit, though. Negative 0.1. Not rushing very much. Obviously, Jared Goff, even if he were rushing, not going to add a lot of value, but 2.5 rushes per game. Honestly, the dropback numbers aren't great. The overall numbers aren't great. I think it's going to get better. I think he's got to be not quite Bryce Young tier. I'm going to put him right here. I think we are closer to mid on both accounts here for Jared Goff. So there we go. Jimmy Garoppolo on the screen. Handsome Jimmy, who was one of the EPA All-Stars in week 1. How did he do in week 2 against the Buffalo defense that certainly got less results for him overall? 27 dropbacks per game, negative 0.05 EPA per pass, 0.05 EPA per dropback. Positive numbers there, always a good thing. When he's pressured, he's crushing it. Pressured 6 times per game, which is not a lot, but a 0.14 EPA on those plays. So Jimmy just acquitting himself well. I think the biggest issue for him might just be that he didn't have Jacoby Myers this week to kind of take some pressure off those forced Devontae Adams targets. 5 rushes per game for Jimmy still, so didn't quite get as much in week 1 when he had 9 rushes, but still an okay number for Jimmy. I don't think this is a great spot for him, but he has real targets. I think he's right behind Dak and Ritter in terms of how good the spot is. And I think he's performing pretty well with it. We'll see what week 3 does, because week 1, he looked great. Week 2, I think we're certainly seeing him come back to the middle a little bit more. Week 3 is going to be, I think, a breaking point for Jimmy G, where if he plays well, we're going to keep him in this range. If he plays poorly, I think he's got to start to come down closer to being a mid player. Joe Burrow, this is not going to be good, is it? 38 dropbacks per game, negative 0.2 EPA per pass, negative 0.23 EPA per dropback. The per dropback numbers are really bad for him. He's handling pressure okay, but getting pressured 14 times a game, which is towards the higher end. Negative 0.25 EPA per dropback when he's pressured. Still converting some touchdowns when he's pressured, though, so maybe some signs of life there. He has been terrible going downfield. 3 deep throws per game, negative 0.1 EPA on those throws. He's not running it right now. Perhaps that calf issue. Apparently the calf is cropping up a little bit for him again. He's only run 1 time per game as well. This is not a great spot for Joe Burrow right now. I think he's a better player than what he's shown, but I think for right now, I think he's got to be like right here. This is not looking good for Joe Burrow. Again, this is just based off of what we're seeing so far. This is not me saying, hey, if you drafted Joe Burrow early in best ball, you're fucked. I don't think that's the case. But I do think for right now, he's got to turn it around here in a meaningful way, because these are poor results as well as poor process from what I'm seeing. And that would certainly worry me. Let's see. With Burrow's huge contract and digression, do we see the same with Patrick Mahomes? No, I don't think so. We'll certainly look at the numbers there, but it's just a different situation. Like Burrow, I think Burrow's basically playing like Mahomes did at the end of last year when he had the high ankle sprain, and he's just, a little bit too gimpy, I think, out there to make things happen. The issue is that Mahomes is still, a tier better at quarterback, I think, even though the contract's obviously a little bit closer. So I think that's where you're seeing the bigger issues, and we'll see. Like, a lot of pressure too coming Burrow's way. That's not a great thing, and he's handling that about as well as he can. But a lot of pressure just has a trickle down effect, and then every snap gets a little bit less effective. So I think that's the main thing you'll blame for Burrow, along with the calf issues. But it's not great. Like, this is not a great start. If you are a big Bengals stack guy, if you're a big Jamar Chase guy, this is not the start you want to see. But it's only 2 games, so hopefully they will turn it around sooner than later. Jordan Love, the apple of my eye, a fucking rock star so far. 0.2 EPA per pass, 0.25 EPA per drop back, 5 pressured dropbacks a game. So he's not getting pressured a lot. When he is getting pressured, though, it is going incredibly poorly. -1 EPA on those plays. But he's chucking the ball downfield when he does get pressured. He has 20 intended air yards per attempt when he's getting pressured. So basically, he's using the pressure as an opportunity to create deep shots, which I like. That's actually the way you want to handle that. Because, theoretically, if you have a blitzer coming and that blitzer creates pressure, you want to throw to where the blitzer is. But if he's seeing other things downfield opening up because of pressure, I think that's a really good trait. So that looks good. 3.5 deep attempts per game for Jordan Love, only a -0.3 EPA on those plays. Not enough volume there. He's only running 1 time per game. I know. Is that correct? No, 2.5 times per game. He's been pretty good with it. 0.7 EPA on those plays. I think Jordan Love right now, not quite a superior player, not quite as good of a spot because of the lack of rushing as some of these guys. I think he's in the mix here. I think he's got to be a little bit lower in terms of being a superior player. He's not as superior as Dak, not as superior as Brock with what they've done so far, not as great of a spot as the rushing QBs. But he's playing well, man. And again, I think that trait of trying to go downfield and attack downfield and you're getting pressured, it could go poorly, but it could go well with the targets he has. So I'm really encouraged by Jordan Love, and obviously getting Christian Watson back hopefully this week. That should bode well as well. Josh Allen. Josh Allen's got a 44.5 dropbacks per game, 0.07 EPA per pass, 0.08 EPA per dropback. That looks good. 12 pressured snaps per game, only a -0.09 EPA on those plays. That bodes well. He's also converting his pressured plays to a 12.5% touchdown rate. He's not throwing it downfield very much. Only 2 deep targets per game at a -0.3 EPA. You got to think that would improve. 4.5 rushes per game. So he's not really in that AR Hurts, Daniel Jones tier as a rusher yet. They're not using him that way, which I guess is probably why you're seeing a lot more efficacy for James Cook, a lot more volume for James Cook as well in the pass game. So if he's not going to be as good of a rusher, I think he's about, honestly, he's like right now in this Jordan Love area, a little more rushing upside, not as good at deep shots. I think Josh Allen and Jordan Love, closer than they might seem based on how they've played so far. You will certainly expect Josh Allen to move a little bit more so towards the great spot area, but it's also possible they just don't want him to run as much. So that could bode poorly for Josh Allen in that respect, but we'll see. Justin Fields. This is going to be a fun one. Oh, I guess Josh Dobbs is not in this graphic. Let's do Josh Dobbs before we hit Justin Fields. Josh Dobbs looks pretty serviceable. I got to be honest. 32.5 dropbacks per game, -0.05 EPA per pass, -0.09 EPA per dropback. Obviously, you'd like to see it be a positive, but it's Josh Dobbs. So, like, the fact that he's even close to average is actually a pretty good thing for how this team's approaching things. A -0.3 EPA on pressure plays, getting pressured 10.5 times a game, which is basically flat average. 2 deep shots per game. He is not good with those. -0.9 EPA on deep shots. 3 rushes per game. He's not great with those. -0.5 EPA. But he's okay. Like, this is like okay for Josh Dobbs. So let's Kyler Murray, of course, the proxy here for Josh Dobbs, since we do not have a Josh Dobbs graphic here. So we'll put in Kyler Murray as Josh Dobbs. He's definitely more of a mid player, but he's better than Bryce. And right now kind of looks close to Goff. The rushing upside, I think, puts him currently ahead of Goff in terms of the superior player portion of things. And honestly, he should, great spot-wise, I think he should go a little bit closer to a great spot than Goff as well because of that rushing too. So there goes Josh Dobbs as Kyler Murray. Justin Fields. Now let's get to what should be a hideous one, I would think. 41.5 dropbacks per game, -0.3 EPA per pass, -0.3 EPA per dropback. That is concerning if you are a Fields backer, because the whole thing for Justin Fields is that he should be I think if not positive in EPA per dropback, he should be better in EPA per dropback than EPA per pass because of the fact that his dropbacks should lead to scrambles. Also, there should be more designed runs here. He's not getting a lot of those. When he's pressured, he is close to the worst QB in the league, negative 1.5 EPA on those pressured plays. He's pressured on 14.5% of his dropbacks. He's playing well when he gets the ball downfield. A 1.5 EPA on deep throws, only 3 deep throws per game. So that bodes well if they can mitigate that pressure a little bit. 6.5 rushes per game, so he's not quite in that AR Daniel Jones, Jalen Hurts tier as a rusher yet in volume. I think we got to see him play better. But this is still a high potential spot with the deep shots, with the run game. So he is closer to a great spot than it might seem, but he needs to improve as a player, or they need to schematically do more to get him into successful spots. But some encouraging numbers, but definitely worrying numbers, just because, again, he should be creating value every time he drops back somehow. And if he's not going to be great as a passer, it's confusing that he's performing well downfield as a passer while still having these negative numbers overall. Like, there's something weird going on there, something that could level out. But I wouldn't throw in the towel on Justin Fields, but so far it does feel like he's kind of a tier behind the guys that he was being drafted around. Justin Herbert. This should be one that I think people will enjoy because there's a lot of Herbert stands out there. 42 dropbacks per game, 0.1 EPA per pass, rounded up 0.1 EPA per dropback as well. Under pressure, 12.5 pressured snaps per game. He's okay. 8% touchdown rate on those, negative 0.5 EPA. It's not doing a whole lot. Is this correct? No, it's okay. Justin Herbert. Okay, there we go. Cool. Boy, Kenny Pickett's numbers coming up next are going to look pretty bad. 4.5 deep throws per game. Again, 20 plus air yards throws. He's got a 0.1 EPA on those. That's pretty good. 3 rushes. So he's not getting that Dak rushing workload that we saw Kellen Moore push Dak's way a little bit more last year. So that's not something that's going to add a ton of value. I think he's playing well. I think the targets look good. I don't think he's currently more efficient than Dak. I do think the offense is going to extend a little bit more for him. So I'm going to put him right near Allen, right near Purdy, a little bit better spot than Dak overall. But the efficiency for Dak is actually a little bit better. So that's why we're going to give Dak currently a slightly better, superior player mark for him overall. It's a balls deep joke in there. Where's it's always a balls deep joke somewhere here on Splash Play, of course. Shouts to the chat, shouts to the Squirt Squad. I know this is a less chat interactive show than I usually like to do, but we got too many fucking players to go through. So that's the tough part. 42 dropbacks per game for Kenny Pickett, negative 0.4 EPA per pass, negative 0.4 EPA per dropback. That is not great. The negative 0.4 EPA per dropback actually looking like the worst mark in the league right now for Kenny Pickett. So preseason, not porting over to the regular season so far. He's getting pressured, though, on 16.5% of his drop, or 60.5 dropbacks, per game, not percent. Negative 0.6 EPA on those plays. So he's actually doing okay with them. Not a great touchdown rate. Where it is really bad for Kenny Pickett right now, and this worries me overall. It's got to get better. Like, there's positive regression coming. 2 deep throws per game, negative 2.3 EPA per deep throw is actually the worst mark in the league right now. 2.5 rushes per game, not adding a lot of value there. Negative 1 EPA per rush. Kenny Pickett is effectively playing like shit. And the volume's not there on deep throws either. Obviously, losing a receiver too is not great for Kenny Pickett. I don't want to make him the stone worst here. Fuck, he might be like Bryce Young tier right now. And I think worse than Bryce. Fuck, I hate this. As a Pickett backer, I really don't like this, but I think he's got to go. He's not full bottom, but he's got to go behind Bryce and lower than Bryce by a little bit. So Kenny Pickett, the most disappointing quarterback for me right now that we have talked about in this period. It's going to get better. I think Pickens showed some flashes there overall, but oof, maybe tough team matchups for him too. Maybe some softer matchups will help pick it out, but this is not a good start. Kirk Cousins, 46.5 dropbacks per game, 0.06 EPA per pass, 0.01 EPA per dropback. So he's staying positive there despite the lack of mobility. When he's pressured, it's not great. 13 pressure dropbacks per game for a negative 0.8 EPA on those plays. Still converting them decently for an 8% touchdown rate. Probably some of that Jordan Addison stuff for him. 3.5 20-plus yard throws, a 1.4 EPA on those plays. So again, that's probably some of the Addison big plays overall, as well as Justin Jefferson being a nice safety blanket. Kirk's rushing 1.5 times per game for a negative 1.5 EPA per rush. So that is not going to add a lot of value there. Kirk's got to go in this. I'm in a good offense, but I'm not going to run the ball tier. I think he's playing well. I think the upside is probably a little better than Derek Carr. So let's put him not quite as good as Purdy, Allen, Herbert, Dak, but a slightly better spot than Derek Carr. And I think an analogous spot to Josh Allen. He's getting more deep throws. He's got better receivers with him, but he's not running the ball at all. So I think Kirk's got to go roughly right there. Let's see. Lamar coming up next year. Boy, this really is a labor of love, guys. I know it might be tedious for me to read every single player out loud and talk about it. This is my process. This is just going through it. So I hope it might add some value for you guys if you stick with me, just reading names aloud and various numbers. 34.5 dropbacks per game for Lamar. He's now 0.07 EPA per pass. That is good because he really played like shit in week 1. 0.09 EPA per dropback. That is good. He is terrible when he's getting pressured. 11.5 dropbacks where he's getting pressured per game, a negative 1.5 EPA on those plays. So that was one thing that we talked about last week, where there were some reports throughout the offseason of Lamar having issues with all the control that's coming his way as a result of this Todd Monken offense. When he's getting pressured, he is playing really, really poorly. So that could be a reflection of that. But still, not a death knell. Still can turn it around, but it's not a great start. 3.5 deep throws per game, 0.9 EPA per throw on those deep throws. He's also running it 9 times per game. That is a great spot. That puts him in the AR, Daniel Jones here. So playing better than AR and Daniel Jones, similar rushing volume. He's not quite as good as Brock in terms of keeping things running on schedule. So I'm going to put Lamar a little bit better than Hurts right now. He's playing better than Hurts. Similar opportunity. I think that's where we are going. AR not practicing today because of concussion protocol. It's the protocol. We'll see what happens later in the week. Can't freak out about it now. Have to bottom Pickett. Yeah, Pickett is playing like a bottom right now. He's just getting it up the butt in every drop back. Mac Jones, of course, high volume here. Most dropbacks per game, 52.5, negative 0.3 EPA per pass. That is really poor. Negative 0.23 EPA per dropback. That is also really poor. 15 pressured dropbacks, which kind of makes sense because he's dropping back so often that would be a higher number there. Negative 0.6 EPA per dropback on pressure is literally average. So Mac, that's the best thing going for him, is that he is average when he's getting pressured. He is taking 6 deep shots per game, which is actually tied for most in the league right now. So that's a bit of a surprise. He's not doing anything with him though. Negative 0.6 EPA on those plays. 33% catchable ball rate. So Mac is playing poorly. When he runs the ball, he's actually playing pretty well. 3.5 rushes per game at a 0.8 EPA. So that's a nice mark for him. This is a good spot. Just this many dropbacks has to be a good spot. So not as much rushing upside as these guys. More pass game volume. So I guess he should be, he's kind of right here. He's got to be close to Derek Carr, maybe in between Carr and Fields, I think. Just that many dropbacks is hard to ignore. But honestly, he's been pretty bad with it. So let's knock him down a little bit more. This is not a great player in Mac Jones, but the situation certainly could be worse. Could be worse in terms of volume. Matthew Stafford. So this is the guy who is befuddling me so far to start the year. Not what I expected from the Rams, even though I did have some Puka shares, did grab a good amount of Kyren Williams on DraftKings. I just didn't expect the Rams to be this functional overall as an offense. 49.5 dropbacks per game, 0.2 EPA per pass, 0.16 EPA per dropback. When he's pressured, he's only getting pressured 9.5 times a game. And that's actually really important to look at because he's played the Niners. That's a key one there, a team that gets a lot of pressure, and they're not getting home to him. The way that this season goes poorly for Stafford is if all of a sudden he gets pressured a lot, because if he gets hit, it's going to be really problematic. He's not creating touchdowns when he's pressured, but only a negative 0.16 EPA per dropback. That's fine. 3.5 deep shots per game for a league average, 0.6 EPA on those plays. That's also fine. He's running 3.5 times per game, which is surprising. I don't know if that'll keep up. I think right now, in terms of the efficiency metrics, I still don't know this is like a great spot, but I think he's playing better than a lot of guys. I think Stafford kind of has to go here. He's probably the most superior player at quarterback from what we've seen so far. I don't know that holds. I don't know as well that he can keep up over the course of a year, both health-wise as well as just going against guys who are going to run the ball and have a lot of success doing that. But I think Stafford right now is probably the biggest surprise, biggest outlier player in terms of everything that he's done so far. Crazy that Mac Jones is hardly drafted in BBM. Took a lot of him in the 18th. Yeah, he was my bailout QB in BBM. So you have to be happy with the volume you're getting as an 18th round QB who's also got a lot of late targets with him. But it feels like the bottom could fall out for Mac Jones at any minute just because he is really ineffective every time that he's actually doing anything you have to do with those plays. Patrick Mahomes, 45 dropbacks per game, negative 0.02 EPA per pass, 0.04 EPA per dropback. So the improvisation there, that's the thing that Burrow is missing, is that Mahomes is creating value just because he's got the ball in his hands. Burrow is not quite doing that, whether it be the health, whether it be the team, who knows. But that does bode well for Mahomes that he's acquitting himself this well so far. 16 pressure dropbacks per game. That was not good. So he's seeing a lot of pressure. That's the kind of thing that worries you about a potential injury for Mahomes at some point, where he's just seeing that much pressure with his desire to do everything he can with every single dropback he gets. That's where the high ankle sprains happen. That's where that stuff does creep up if somebody gets a hold of him. So a little bit of a worrying note there, but again, he's handling it well. 16 pressure dropbacks per game, but a negative 0.1 EPA. That's actually a pretty good mark for QB getting pressured that much. 5.5 deep shots per game. That's close to the top of the league. That bodes pretty well. 6.5 rushes per game. You probably don't want to see Mahomes running that much just because of his status as the franchise, the guy that for you as a best ball player or as a season-long player, redraft player, he's your franchise too. So I think in some respects, that makes it a worse spot for Mahomes. But he is running. He's making it work. He's not playing above average right now, but taking deep shots. So he's got to go in this middle line because he's not playing above average right now. But I think the signs are there for him to move upwards to the top right here as we go. Russell Wilson. I wonder if this is going to be surprising because Russ has been... he's got some outlier plays, if not outlier performances. 39.5 dropbacks per game, average negative 0.06 EPA per pass, 0.07 EPA per dropback, though. So he's actually creating value in those improvisational moments, which is kind of interesting. Getting pressured 12 and a half times, it's basically average negative 0.9 EPA on those plays. It's not too great, but he is converting an 8% touchdown rate when pressured. That bodes pretty well. Obviously, the deep shots. So this is what's carrying him right now. 3 deep shots per game, 1.9 EPA on those plays, 67% catchable ball rate. You saw how open Marvin Mims was on Sunday. Obviously ran 5 routes, had an outlier day. Russ also really running efficiently, 3.5 rushes per game with a 1.3 EPA on those plays. So not bad for Russ, honestly. Not enough volume to put him in this tier. He's probably not good enough to be up here, but getting deep shots, being successful with him kind of makes him Rittery. I'm going to put him, I want to put him like right next to Ritter, but I don't think he's necessarily in a worse spot. But he and Ritter basically, I think, 1-to-1. This is actually pretty close. I thought Pickett would never see an NFL field. Do we think we're at a ceiling already? Tilt farming. I think there's the positive regression is going to be there, I think, for him. But it's tough because, like, I believe a lot in Pickens, but you lose Deontay Johnson, you replace him with Calvin Austin and Allen Robinson. That's clearly less good options, you would think. Freiermuth also not involved. The running back game, like if they keep trotting Najee out there, that's like what we talked about with Nick Chubb, but the exact opposite, where it's like, you know, you can play close, you know, you can pressure, you know, you can send guys after the QB, because even if they run with Najee, like what's he going to do? He's not going to make you hurt in any way. So I think really the big thing that would help pick it out is having Jaylen Warren out there and having him be able to run some routes and get some breathing room for him. So there's things they could do to fix it. I just think, you know, as Steelers fans can attest, you might not find it fixed by Matt Canada based on what they've seen from him so far. Ryan Tannehill, hopefully we can pick up some speed running on these shitty QBs. 34.5 dropbacks for Tannehill, average, negative 0.2 EPA per pass, average, negative 0.2 EPA per dropback, worse than average. 12.5 pressured plays, negative 1.4 EPA on pressured plays. That is really bad for Tannehill, who's not thrown a touchdown on those plays and only 64% on target when he's being pressured, which actually could be worse. So he's doing his thing for the most part, but it's not turning out well for him. 3 deep throws per game, negative 0.03 EPA on those plays, which is basically average, not adding value, not really taking any away. 2 rushes per game, negative 0.07 there. Tannehill, mid spot. A little better than Bryce, a little better than Pickett, but he doesn't deserve much more than that. Sam Howell. When is I got to read this. I'm a big hands guy, which no metrics can shake. So he seems like a wild anomaly. I'm a big hands guy. Just that sentence alone, consigliere. You paid for yourself with that one. But yeah, small hands. I don't know. Like small hands were okay in the preseason. I think he's just running bad right now, and there'll be a run good at some point. But again, it's got to come through Jaylen Warren. It's got to come through Freiermuth. It's got to come through George Pickens. So we'll see what they do. Sam Howell. Not expecting great things looking here. 42 dropbacks per game, negative 0.09 EPA per pass, negative 0.03 EPA per dropback. So Mid, pretty mid. 13.5 pressure dropbacks per game, negative 1.1 EPA on those plays. Only 1.5 deep shots per game. Of course, he's only fucking throwing 1.5 deep shots per game, and he's crushing it. A 2.8 EPA on the deep plays for Sam Howell. So there's something they can do here. He's also running it 2 times per game with over a 1 EPA on those plays. Howell's playing okay. Howell is actually, I think, they got to figure some shit out. They got to make this better. I think he is near this Deshaun Geno tier where there can be better days. It's just a matter of how they're calling these plays, how they're trusting him to do things. That certainly is going to be an important one for him. It's just getting better play calls, getting better opportunity, allowing him to get the leash taken off so he can actually make some plays happen. Obviously, it's going to come with some risk as well because it's Sam Howell, but I think there could be better days for him, but he's one of those guys that I think could swing down. He could swing up. Wouldn't surprise me. Trevor Lawrence. This is awful. This is Trevor Lawrence's biggest disappointment, I think, what we're seeing numerically. 42 dropbacks per game, negative 0.3 EPA per pass, negative 0.37 EPA per dropback, which is just behind Pickett. So he is actually playing roughly as bad as Kenny Pickett. He's getting pressured 10.5 times per game with a negative 2 EPA on pressured dropbacks. He's not thrown a touchdown. He has a 46% on target rate, a 54% catchable ball rate when he's getting pressured. Trevor Lawrence cannot handle pressure, so keep that in mind for matchups. Obviously, you expect that to get better, but this is a really poor start. This is not good. Deep shots are okay. 3.5 deep shots per game, 0.8 EPA on those. He's running the ball 6 times per game and been pretty bad with that as well. Negative 0.9 EPA on his run plays. Honestly, if we're saying relative to draft capital, if we're saying relative to people's expectations, I think you put Trevor Lawrence here. Relative to just the pure numbers, I think he is a little bit ahead of Pickett, a little bit ahead of Pickett, a little bit behind Bryce. This is a terrible start. I know I was not a Trevor Lawrence believer. This is the worst possible start you could have had for Trevor Lawrence. If you were a big buyer on him, and I know there are a lot of them on social media, I saw him. I cannot underscore enough. This is one of the worst starts you could have ever wanted for this guy that people thought could be a QB1. So awful for Trevor Lawrence. I am wowed by how bad these numbers are. Tua Tagovailoa, 39 dropbacks per game, 0.37. The presumptive MVP, the MVP favorite right now is Tua. 0.37 EPA per pass, 0.25 EPA per dropback. So in the improvisation, he's not quite as good as just straight dropbacks for pass plays, but he's doing fine with it. When he's pressured, he is a rock star. 10 pressure plays for a 0.3 EPA. That is the best mark in the league under pressure. Obviously, a lot of this, I think, has to go to Mike McDaniels, but 6 deep throws per game, 0.4 EPA on those plays. Could be a little bit better. And honestly, you can make the case that he might be due for positive regression on his deep plays as well. So that's actually kind of interesting. 4.5 runs per game for Tua. He's terrible with them. Negative 1.5 EPA. Great spot. I think great player. Volumes here. Tua is the apex predator once again here. Top right corner. Absolutely deserves to be there. And then these guys, Will Levis, Trey Lance. I don't know. Did we just put him down here for... just for the sake of completion? I suppose we should. There we go. Here are your SPAGS rankings for QBs. Of course, we got more positions to hit, guys, and that took 42 minutes. But the labor of love continues on. Let's move it. Actually, let's pull up running backs next. And then let's also quickly, please, let's pander for subs. This is hard work. This is a lot of shit. I'm trying to keep it flowing as well as I can, but that took way too fucking long. Either way, though, I have to do this. This is what the process is. I want these rankings to be as thorough as I possibly could make them. So please subscribe here. Please support Splash Play. Help us get to 3K subs. We're on the march here. And of course, go check out Probably as well. If you want to get some good bets in, go to probably.com. Lose less, bet smart at probably.com. And you can always find the best bets. You can also find our data. We accumulate from the top markets in the world to tell you what the best bets are too. But you can also just scroll through and find what the best odds for any bets you want to take. So check it out, probably.com. Go do that right now. Let me keep that up. I got to promote my shit better. I know I got to do that. Caress that like. All right, running backs. Let's go over here. Let me sort alphabetically. Should have done this beforehand, but I did not. Lord knows that I did not. Let's sort by intended touches per game. We'll do it that way. Largest to smallest. All right, and just running backs. The godforsaken running backs. All right, let's start with, let's not do alphabetical for this one. Though honestly, that's probably going to be easier. Let's do alphabetical. Let's do alphabetical. How I quickly change my plan here. Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones, of course, banged up. Probably don't even need to do him. We'll see what his status is throughout the week. Hamstring issue for an older player, never going to be a good thing. When he has played, though, it's looked pretty good. 0.27 EPA per rush, 1.4 EPA per pass, 28 snaps, not the biggest workload snap-wise, 13 intended touches in game one for him. Things could be worse for Aaron Jones. We'll see when he gets back out there. I do think he's currently playing like a superior player. The spot, though, with A.J. Dillon. A.J. Dillon's so inefficient. I'm still going to put him like here. I don't think it's a great spot. Obviously, him having 20 touches a game and being that efficient would be the great spot, but he's playing like a superior player. So got to give him credit for that, assuming that he was actually going to be a player who plays at some point this year. Loving this. I don't think it was long enough. Well, not the first time I've heard that one in life. Am I right, fellas? Also, I don't think I could possibly spend more time talking about QBs than I did. Dillon, A.J. Dillon. A.J. Dillon stinks. Negative 0.2 EPA per rush, 0.3 EPA per pass. That's looking pretty okay. 16 intended touches per game. Obviously going to be inflated by having game two with no Aaron Jones. 31.5 snaps. Is he getting any red zone work that matters? 2.5 red zone rushes. No red zone targets. I think Dillon's in a pretty good spot here, especially for a 0 RB guy. He's not doing a whole lot with it. I'll put him a little bit above average because of the pass game work looking okay. But Dillon, he's not Aaron Jones. Like, that's the biggest issue with him. So being not Aaron Jones, that's not great. Consigliere using his special free super chat here. Baby hands Burrow looks like Debo compared to Pickett. Rip Tariq Cohen. All right, there we go. Is Tariq Cohen on the Panthers now? Didn't seem like he's getting a lot of work, but at least he's got a job, right? That's what matters. Having a job is important. Madison. I don't expect good things here. Negative 0.3 EPA per rush, so pretty much right in a little bit worse than A.J. Dillon, I guess. Negative 0.3 EPA per pass, also not great. 45.5 snaps per game, 14.5 intended touches. So those intended touches getting a little bit flimsier. Still 2 red zone rushes a game, 1 red zone target. That is pretty valuable. He's worse than Dillon, but in a pretty good spot too, just because of the volume. You got to assume that there are going to be days where he gets closer to 18 touches than 15, but we're not seeing it right now. So that's it's a little flimsy. I don't love that one. Antonio Gibson, the worst of the worst. Negative 1 EPA per rush. That is terrible. 0.4 EPA per pass, not terrible, though Brian Robinson is looking a lot better as a passer. But we'll talk about that when we get to him. 4.5 intended touches per game. Antonio Gibson, I think he got himself out of this bottom area. He was our bottom left guy last week. I think the fact that he did anything in the pass game makes it look a little better, but no volume at all. He's got to go like right here. Still pretty close to the bottom, but not terrible. Austin Eckler, I mean, this is a tough one because who knows how long he's out. That's going to inherently make it a worse spot, but 0.34 EPA per rush, 0.28 EPA per pass. That all bodes pretty well. 5 red zone rushes per game, 1 red zone target per game. He's great. It's just, when is he going to play? Does it behoove him to play with the contract stuff, with these rumors out there of the NFL Players Association telling the running backs to just sit out any injuries, even if it's a fake one? So Austin Eckler, I think right now it's not a great spot. He is a great player. So he's better than Aaron Jones, but the spot we got to question because you just don't know when he's going to get back. So Eckler right now, I think if he were full go, he goes up here. If he's not full go, he's got to go like right here. There we go. Let's see. Who's up next? Bijan. Oh, this should be a fun one. Bijan. 0.2 EPA per rush, 0.23 EPA per pass, looking good. 46 snaps per game, 20 intended touches per game. So he's already getting the full bell cow work. Does feel like Tyler Algier took a backseat in this week 2 compared to week 1. Maybe that's a matchup thing. Maybe that's just more trust for Bijan. I hope a little bit more of the former. I think that maybe that was a matchup. Just you don't want to have a power runner against Green Bay. It could be the case, though, that Bijan is just this dude. 2 red zone rushes per game now, 1.5 red zone targets. So it's not the greatest spot in the world. He is crushing it, though. Is he avoiding tackles? 28% avoided tackle rate, too. 41% avoided tackle rate on pass plays. Bijan is already the apex. He's not going to be the top guy. I'm not going to put him in full top right corner for superior player and great spot, but he's about as close as you can get in week 2. This is if you are a Bijan investor, this is a start that you wanted. This is what I had talked about in the offseason, where if I was going to take one late round running back in the first round or the 1-2 turn, it was Bijan or Chubb. Obviously, Chubb now off the docket. Bijan's getting the work. Still some concerns that Algier sees a little bit back as a guy who is pretty effective. But this is Bijan. Can't argue it. Breece, this is interesting, I think. So Breece looking great. 0.2 EPA per rush. Not great in the pass game so far. Negative 0.2 EPA per pass. Down to 9 to 10 touches per game. 16.5 snaps per game. This is currently a bad spot for Breece. He's not getting any red zone work. Yeah, this is a bad spot. This is a bad spot for Breece. He's a good player. He is currently a little bit better than Antonio Gibson. This is not good. This is not the start you want for Breece. Coming off the injury, people certainly invested in him at really high draft capital. Having Dalvin in the mix, having Zach Wilson as the QB, these are two things that meaningfully hurt Breece Hall. If you're not going to give him 20 touches a game, you're just not going to have the efficacy. You're not going to have him breaking those one big plays that it kind of prop up a lot of okay plays that he puts out there. So I don't know that you worry about Breece yet. You can't really worry about anybody. It's week 2, but this is not the encouraging start I think you want to see from Breece Hall. Brian Robinson. Where's Brian? Where's Brian the dog? That's what we call him because he's got that dog in him. Brian Robinson, negative 0.08 EPA per rush. It's whatever. I mean, you're going to expect negative EPAs on rush numbers sometimes. So if you have a positive, you hold on to those guys like gold. 0.6 EPA per pass. That's fantastic. 40.5 snaps per game, 21 intended touches per game for Brian Robinson. So we are already safely in great spot territory. He's not missing a lot of tackles, though. 11% avoided tackle rate. Still getting 2.8 yards after contact, but that could be better if he had any shiftiness whatsoever. Running 11.5 routes per game. Getting 3. Is that right? You're getting 3 red zone rushes, 0.5 red zone targets per game. This is a great spot. He's an okay player. I think a little better than AJ Dillon. Definitely not Bijan, but the workload's not far off. Fuck, that's a great spot for Brian Robinson, especially if we are kind of rolling in ADP in this one. Brian Robinson looking currently, I would say, like the steal of all steals. Cam Akers, here you go. You get the ceremonial corner spot. Cam has not been good, and now he doesn't even have a team. And also the Browns signed Kareem Hunt, so that's one less destination for him. Cam looking tough. Chase Brown, I don't even think we need to put a number on. Chase barely playing. Yeah, Chase Brown, 1 touch, 1 snap, negative 0.3 EPA. Well, we'll leave Chase out of the mix. He doesn't deserve to be slandered yet. Maybe his day will come, but it is not today. Christian McCaffrey, 0.7 EPA per rush, flat 0 EPA per pass. So he's just doing what's given to him, which is sometimes all you can ask at this much volume. 3.5 red zone rushes per game, not avoiding tackles, 12% avoided tackle rate, but still getting yards after contact, 4.4 yards after contact. So not the full Brian Robinson there. 4 targets per game. I mean, you just can't argue with the workload, 25 intended touches. One thing to worry about, though, is that Kyle Shanahan did say he felt irresponsible giving McCaffrey as much work as he's had the first 2 weeks, especially in week 2. So you should see Elijah Mitchell come up a little bit more. But for right now, I don't think he's as good of a player as Bijan, if I'm being honest. But the workload's better. So McCaffrey, great spot. A little bit short of a superior player. I just, volume, always that, but he's not Saquon. So he's actually a good player. He's just not like Bijan's better. Bijan's younger. That's always how it's going to go, especially here on Splash Play. Dalvin Cook. Okay, let's see Dalvin. Oh, this is worse than I thought it would be. Negative 0.5 EPA per rush, one of the worst marks in the league. 22 snaps per game, 10.5 intended touches. So he's in as bad of a spot as Breece. He is getting more red zone work, though, 2.5 red zone touches. But still, just 10.5. Dalvin is not going to do a lot for you. Sorry to our pal Jerry. What you do, Dalvin? He's got to be a superior player. Move him up, Spags. Move him to the top right corner. No, Jerry, we can't do that. We have to go with Dalvin being in a slightly better spot than Breece, but a much worse player with it. So he's, I guess, the 2.5 red zone touches. Maybe move him closer to here. But yeah, he stinks. This is stinky. This is wasted touches. This Jets team were a top 10 Super Bowl odds team. I think a top 7 Super Bowl odds team. Unless the defense becomes the 86 Bears, I just don't think that this is going to happen for them. This is really, this is poor. This is a poor situation. Dameon Pierce. So we talked about CJ Stroud. Stroud better than expected. Should continue to improve. Pierce looks like one of the worst running backs in the league. Negative 0.4 EPA per rush, negative 0.7 EPA per pass, 37 snaps per game, 16 intended touches. He's avoiding tackles. He's getting shitty at avoiding tackles too. 11.5% avoided tackle rate. So he's not even doing the one thing that he did well last year. This looks terrible. 2.5 red zone rushes. That's okay. 0.5 red zone targets per game. That's okay. He hasn't avoided a single tackle when catching a pass. This is the worst run out you could have wanted for Dameon Pierce, besides, I guess, Devin Singletary getting 20 touches a game. He's getting better work than those guys. He's getting similar work to Dalvin, but he's playing worse than Dalvin. Woof. Dameon Pierce, this is busto. This is a bad start. I would not be happy if I were a big Dameon Pierce share guy. Damian Harris, spelled the correct way. Damian Harris, wow. 0.3 EPA per rush, 0.45 EPA per pass, only getting 11.5 snaps per game, not avoiding tackles in the run game, is avoiding tackles in the pass game, 50% avoided tackle rate, but only 1 target per game, so that probably doesn't matter that much. Damian Harris, though, getting some red zone work, 2 red zone rushes per game. Honestly, that's not bad. This could be a lot worse of a run out for Damian Harris. I am shocked how good these numbers look. I think for right now, based off of this small sample size kind of numbers, Harris... Aaron Jonesy, not quite the volume. He's got to be closer to here. Good run out for Damian Harris. This is not bad. I'm actually pleased with my Damian Harris shares based on what I'm seeing with these numbers. Swift. So Swift obviously looked like a world beater in week 2. I think a lot of that was because of the offensive line creating things for him. But it does look good numerically. 0.24 EPA per rush, negative 0.4 EPA per pass. So it does feel like he's really not adding much value in the pass game so far. 38.5 snaps per game, 17 intended touches. And that's obviously including a week 1 where he was not involved at all. So that bodes pretty well for volume, if nothing else, for Swift. 7% avoided tackle rate. That stinks. 25% avoided tackle rate when he's getting a target. That's closer to okay. Red zone work, though, 3.5 red zone rushes per game. He's not a great player yet. I guess the runs do look pretty good, so you have to give him credit there. The pass game work, he's got to be better than Brian Robinson. I think a little bit worse than McCaffrey. The spot, though, if we are to take it at face value, if he's going to hold on to this volume and Kenneth Gainwell's not back and Rashad Penny doesn't threaten for more work, I think let's give him a little bit of a buffer, but this is one of the best spots in the league. Swift, I think, just especially for rolling in the offensive line play, it's a really good spot for Swift. So I think Swift actually looks pretty good, but I don't think that role is locked in by any stretch. David Montgomery. So he's hurt with a thigh bruise, might be out a few weeks. They did add Zonovan Knight to their active roster. Craig Reynolds also going to be in the mix. So don't lock in Jahmyr Gibbs for a bunch of quality offers or opportunities overall. But David Montgomery, negative 0.1 EPA per rush, 0.6 EPA per pass. So he's actually been pretty good catching a pass. 19 intended touches per game on 42.5 snaps. If we account for the injury dump down a little bit, that's going to hurt him. But he gets 3.5 red zone rushes per game as well. Montgomery, pretty great spot. But again, accounting for the injuries and all that, I think we put him in here. Let's still put him ahead of Dillon and Madison because he's going to come back. I think it's the same workload unless Gibbs becomes full Barry Sanders. So Montgomery there looks pretty good. Is this serious? Is Consigliere doing a bit? Shallow league acres for Breida, Craig Reynolds, Penny, or Bigsby? I guess if you're going to do any of those, Breida, but you might want to hang on to Akers. I don't know. I just don't know who trades for Akers at this point, just given how bad of capital he is. But unfortunately, I have to answer Consigliere's league questions because he actually is a member here. And unlike Toast, who's just coming in looking for free advice, no free advice here on the show that only gives out free advice. Derrick Henry. How's D-Rock doing? Not Derek Gore. Derrick Henry, negative 0.06 EPA per rush, 0.3 EPA per pass, 23.5 intended touches per game. Not avoiding tackles, 7.5% avoided tackle rate, but he's old and basically a fucking marble statue. So I don't think Derrick Henry's going to get a lot there. 4 red zone rushes per game. You wish he ran more routes. They're giving away all of his routes to Tyjae Spears, 8.5 routes per game for Derrick Henry. That's going to knock him off of being a fully great spot. But I think he's right in the Swift Robinson tier. The red zone work gets him a little bit closer to McCaffrey, I think. So we'll have Swift. Yeah, Swift, Henry, McCaffrey, Robinson. These guys are all kind of on the same spectrum. But Robinson, of course, being the less talented of that grouping here. Do we even want to rank Deuce Vaughn? Do we have to? Deuce, negative 0.5 EPA per rush. Hasn't avoided a single tackle on his 6 touches per game. Hasn't avoided a tackle in the pass game either. Deuce, I have to. He's not quite as bad of a spot as Cam Akers, who doesn't have a job, but Deuce stinks, and I'm right so far about Deuce stinking. It's just funny to say like that, but I think that Deuce is just not that guy, and everybody who's drafting Deuce might have some regrets, I think, would be what I would say. But we told you, did warn you. Devon A-Chain has not done enough and is not in my sheet correctly. Still think, though, there's opportunity for him. Savon Ahmed out with a groin issue. So A-Chain, I think let's just put him right here. Opportunity to move up into this range at some point. But right now, Mostert is clearly the back that matters. Elijah Mitchell, same thing here, just not doing anything. I think he's a better player based on what we saw last year. But here, let's just put him slightly better player than A-Chain, but the spot's nothing right now. Pacheco. What are you doing, Isaiah Pacheco? 0.08 EPA per rush, 0.2 EPA per target, 32.5 snaps, 13 intended touches. Excuse me, I was reading the wrong guy. 13 intended touches per game, 10% avoided tackle rate, 2 red zone rushes. This is mid. Pacheco, I think, was in this exact same spot last week. He's a pretty good player. The workload is kind of whatever. Though I guess with that much volume, he shouldn't be that far behind Dylan and Madison. Yeah, let's put him here. Pretty good player. Volume's not great, but neither is the volume for Dylan or Madison, so that makes sense. There we go. Deuce defending Deuce Vaughn. He just needs a few more hops. Been on like a few plays and they were all miserable. Yeah, because he sucks. He sucks and he's Bugsy Bogues size, which are two really big flaws for a running back. Is 1, you suck. 2, you're a Funko Pop. I think those are pretty tough. Jahmyr Gibbs, negative 0.2 EPA per rush. Negative 0.4 EPA per pass, which is surprising given how, you watch Gibbs with the eye test, but according to the EPA numbers, expected points added metrics, which I swear by, and I think has put me on a lot of great players, some of you guys as well, so far this year. Gibbs is not as good as Montgomery, which is hard to believe, but it seems like the case. 25.5 snaps per game, 12.5 intended touches, 50% avoided tackle rate on runs. He's not avoiding tackles on receptions too well, which surprises me. He hasn't avoided a tackle on a reception yet, so that must be the issue. 0.5 red zone rushes per game. This is not a great spot for Gibbs. It's one that could get better, but he's not played well. I'm going to put him in the middle here, but a little bit beneath average, just because numerically he is not adding value. And what you want to see is, guys, if they're putting up a 0, that means they're keeping the things on schedule. They're keeping the plays where they need to be. If they're putting up negative numbers in both the rushing and passing metrics, that just means that he's not actually adding value. And some, like Dameon Pierce last year, you could have these flashy plays. You can have the shiftiness. You can have all that, but it doesn't mean that you're actually creating value with the football. And I think that's something that's hard to kind of unpack, to parse out for people. But Gibbs so far, I think, has done less than I would have thought, which is a bit of a bummer. Jamal Williams is going to be out a few weeks, and he's been terrible. Negative 0.2 EPA per rush, negative 0.3 EPA per pass, getting 15 intended touches per game. That includes, obviously, getting injured that last game and going out. So Jamal Williams, and obviously Jamal, 11% avoided tackle rate, not doing much there. The spot should get worse because he's going to come back to Kamara being back and potentially Kendre Miller earning a role. This is a bad spot for Jamal, I think, potentially, but not quite as bad as Mitchell and A-Chain yet, but he's a worse player. So let's put Jamal here. Love how we as a fantasy community say players suck, but they are at the top 100 in the world of their profession. That's true. That's true. Look, that's true of anything here, but it still is all relative to a scale. Like, yes, if they come into your flag football league, they're going to dust you. They're going to destroy you. Even if they're playing fucking positions they don't actually play because they're superior athletes. If they're going against the top upper echelon of athletes and you're grading them, 1-to-1, I think that's where you could sort of say, like, guys suck. But it's also, sucking is kind of a fluid thing. Like, guys suck in one situation, they move to another situation, it gets better. Guys suck, a player goes out, it gets better. So that's sort of where it is. Like, you suck based on what you've done so far, but you don't have to suck forever unless you do. And then it is what it is. James Conner. This should be interesting, actually. James Conner, negative 0.03 EPA per rush, negative 0.4 EPA per pass. The volume, though, looks very good. 21.5 intended touches per game on 49.5 snaps per game. 1.5 red zone rushes per game. 0.5 red zone targets per game. This is a solid workload. Not a good player. Great spot, though. Slightly worse Brian Robinson, I think, is where I would put Connor, but I'll give a little breathing room so we could see Connor here. But yeah, same spot, similarly bad players. James Cook. 0.04 EPA per rush, negative 0.2 EPA per pass. So not that great. 19.5 intended touches, though, look pretty good. 28% avoided tackle rate looks pretty good. He's also avoiding tackles on pass plays at a 13% rate, which could be better. Losing the goal line work and red zone work is pretty tough. 1 red zone rush per game. It's a good volume spot, but if you're not going to get the red zone work, I just don't think it's as valuable as it could be. I think Cook's a slightly better David Montgomery right now. I don't know that's going to be the case all year, but for right now, I think that feels about right to me. Volume's there, but less red zone work. You can make the case the lack of red zone work would put him behind Montgomery. But Montgomery being hurt, I think, puts Cook a little bit ahead. So that's where I'll keep these guys. Javonte. Where are you at, Javonte? Javonte, negative 0.1 EPA per rush, negative 0.4 EPA per pass, 29.5 snaps per game, but he's getting the ball every time he's on the field, basically 17 intended touches per game, 58% intended touch rate for him. He's actually shifty. So Javonte's still missing tackles well, despite coming off this injury. 24% avoided tackle rate overall, hasn't avoided any tackles in the pass game, but 1 red zone rush per game. This is a pretty good spot, but he's not playing well. Good spot, not playing well. Not quite James Conner, good of a spot. I think he's right here. Like, let's put him near James Cook. And I do think he's about equal to Madison. So I'm actually going to knock Madison down a little bit here. All right. Dobbins. Poor Dobbins. Dobbins out. Do we have a Gus? Yeah, we have Gus and Justice Hill, I think, in here somewhere. So let's not put Dobbins in. Mixon, though. Joey Jojo Mixon, negative 0.04 EPA per rush, negative 0.1 EPA per pass, 41 snaps per game, getting 18 intended touches on those. That looks pretty okay. 12% avoided tackle rate, not too good. 3 red zone rushes per game is pretty good. 0.5 red zone targets per game is pretty good. Mixon is just another mid-volume guy who I think just goes around here. Slightly worse than Connor. I think he's roughly the same player as James Conner. The spot's not quite as good yet. Yeah, I'm going to put Mixon right on top of Connor. I think that's where he deserves to go. Jonathan Taylor, we'll keep him out for now. Because wait, do we have Zach Moss in here? We have Deion Jackson in this one. No Zach Moss. We'll put Jonathan Taylor in as a proxy for Zach Moss, because I do think Moss is probably somebody we should talk about. Zach Moss, 0.04 EPA per rush, negative 0.3 EPA per pass. The most important thing for Zach Moss, he's less of an embarrassment than Deion Jackson was, and that completely resulted in him taking Deion Jackson's role. Deion Jackson had no role whatsoever in week 2 because he absolutely, I don't think Deion Jackson, unless every running back gets hurt, I don't think Deion Jackson ever gets back in the mix this year. So if you drafted him, if you're one of the people that are flocking him at the end of best ball, I think those shares are pretty fucked, because I think what he put on tape in week 1, I just don't think you dig out of, barring, again, the Simpsons softball analogy between every running back going south. And obviously Taylor's going to get healthier. Moss looks okay. And they did add Trey Sermon to the practice squad. So Deion Jackson to me, DOA, unfortunately. But Zach Moss, 33% avoided tackle rate, which is actually really good, given that he had 18 rushes in that game. Also does have 26 routes in that game. That's incredibly good. 2 red zone rushes per game, 1 inside the 5. This is a live role for Zach Moss. I don't know how much that gets hurt by AR being in the mix. In some respects, AR being in the mix will hurt Zach Moss. In other respects, it's going to make it easier for him to get more effective rushes. This is a really good spot for Jonathan Taylor as Zach Moss here. I think he is actually pretty close to Brian Robinson tier. That role for the Colts, whether it is Minshew, whether it is AR, that is unbelievably good. That is unbelievably good. Josh Jacobs, how's he been? Not great results so far. Not great numbers either. Negative 0.3 EPA per rush, negative 0.34 EPA per pass, 19 intended touches per game. He's avoiding tackles decently, 21% rate there. Avoiding tackles at a 29% clip when he's catching the ball on his 5 targets per game. And he is still getting red zone work, getting 2.5 red zone rushes per game. But he's not the Josh Jacobs of last year so far. So still a great spot. But I think he's basically a slightly better James Conner here. So he is in the James Conner, Brian Robinson tier. Chance to move up to the Henry tier, but we are not seeing it so far based on what he's put on tape. Kendre Miller, he's got to go in this A-chain range. We'll see what he could do. But his opportunity is coming up next week. If no Williams out there, no Kamara for one more week with suspension, Kendre's got to play this week, and he's got to be out there, and he's got to have a good game to earn a role. So he's in this Elijah Mitchell A-chain tier where we expect these guys to get more work. For right now, though, no work, no value, nothing to note. Let's see. Kenneth Gainwell, no. Kenneth Walker, 0.03 EPA per rush. That's actually really good news for Kenneth Walker because he was a negative analytics guy last year despite having that juicy avoided tackle rate. And he is juking the shit out of guys this year. 41% avoided tackle rate. For some reference there, a 33% rate's usually pretty good. That's where guys end up at the end of the year and you go, that guy's incredibly shaky. 41% is incredibly shaky. So Walker is looking good so far despite starting the year with some issues. He's also getting 18 intended touches per game, so just shy of 20. 3.5 of those are targets. And he's also getting quality red zone work, 4 red zone touches per game, 2 inside the 5, 0.5 red zone targets per game. I'm actually worried now for Zach Charbonnet seeing these numbers. Kenneth Walker's a fragile guy, so we can see if he gets out there, but he is currently, I think he's in this Swift, Henry, McCaffrey tier. Not quite as good of a workload, so we're going to bump him down from being a great spot. But this is good results for Kenneth Walker. I'm surprised to see these good of results. So that's one. Zach Charbonnet, going to be hard perhaps to see the field if Walker keeps playing like this. Khalil Herbert, 0.1 EPA per rush, negative 0.6 EPA per pass. So that is why Roshan is very live to fully seize that pass game role. Man, just not a lot of touches. He's not getting a lot of red zone work either. 0.5 red zone rushes per game, none inside the 5 yet. Avoiding tackles at a 12.5% clip, hasn't avoided one in the pass game. Khalil Herbert, you are not playing well. Khalil Herbert is in the better than Dalvin Cook range. I'm going to put him in the middle here. I think he's our middle back, but he's going to go this way. He's going to get worse as Roshan seizes more of a share. That is not the start you want to see from Khalil Herbert. I would be really worried about Khalil Herbert because that role was already fragile and the team is already playing poorly. And one thing you can change is putting Roshan out there for more snaps. So bodes well for Roshan, bodes poorly for old Khalil Herbert. Miles Sanders looked awful against a New Orleans team that was a net neutral rushing team in terms of EPA allowed in week 1 and week 2. They made Miles Sanders look a lot worse. Negative 0.2 EPA per rush, negative 0.28 EPA per pass, 40.5 snaps per game. Chuba's coming for him there, but he does get 21.5 intended touches per game, so that is still a noteworthy metric. Is he avoiding he's only got a 3% avoided tackle rate, so no shakiness. 14% avoided tackle rate when catching passes. He's getting 5.5 targets per game. But because the team sucks, he's only getting 1.5 red zone rushes per game. None yet inside the 5-yard line. Miles Sanders, good role, looking really bad. And the role could get worse. So I'm going to put Sanders here. Honestly, he should probably be better spot than Javonte right now, but comparably bad play. Yeah, I'm going to put Miles Sanders here. Is Herbert droppable and managed? I would hold on one more week, I think, but you're getting pretty close to it. Yeah. Like if having him in the middle means to me that he can go up a little bit more if the game script benefits him and if they give him more work. But the fact that he's been so bad in the past game, and we know that Roshan, that's his one saving grace. If you really have somebody you like in a managed league, like if you could somehow get Kyren or you could somehow get Puka or one, like, I don't know who you would get. If you get Ford, maybe, then I would consider dropping Herbert, but I would rather drop somebody else yet, just because you invested so highly in Herbert, theoretically, Khalil Herbert, that I would try to ride it out for one more week. I try to advocate more for having diamond hands with these guys for the most part, but the signs are not encouraging. So you could do whatever you want with that one. I could go either way. Najee Harris. Oh, here we go. Najee Harris. What are we doing, Najee? Negative 0.2 EPA per rush, negative 0.6 EPA per pass, 32 snaps per game, 10.5 intended touches. So he's not even the bell cow people wanted. Have to give him credit. A 25% avoided tackle rate for Najee Harris. That's like 100% avoided tackle rate for a normal running back. Avoiding tackles 33% of the time when he's catching the ball. He just doesn't move fast. He doesn't move well. And he's also now not getting the red zone work, whether it be, I mean, mostly because the Steelers aren't getting there. The 0.5 red zone rushes per game. This is a bad spot. This is a bad player who I think could be worse. Najee is Dalvin Cook right now. But Dalvin with some slightly better metrics so far, but EPA wise, not so much. So Najee, Dalvin, I think 1-to-1. I think that's how that should go. All right. Poor Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb, ceremonial Nick Chubb. Go up top, bud. Nick Chubb is the fucking best, man. Again, I hate running backs. I think they're a fungible piece. Obviously, that's kind of mean to say now, given what's going on for these guys. But like, Nick Chubb is just so good, and it just upsets me that he's gone now. And on the year, where is he? 0.14 EPA per rush, 0.17 EPA per pass, 39% avoided tackle rate. Like, Nick Chubb is just that dude. So sad to lose him. Take your spot here on top. Nick Chubb, superior player. This football's for you. Cheers. Cheers to Nick Chubb. I hope he gets back. Going to be tough to get back, but I hope he gets back. But also, like, don't treat this ranking as gospel. Like, Nick Chubb is not your RB1 moving forward in the SPAGS rankings. He just gets that one as his flowers. Rachaad White's still a negative 0.1 EPA per rush. Back in the positives in the pass game, though. 0.2 EPA per pass, 20.5 intended touches per game. Hard to ignore. Avoiding tackles really poorly. 3% avoided tackle rate. So no shiftiness, 2.2 yards after contact. So he's not generating power avoidance either. That's not too great. He is avoiding tackles at a 14% clip when being targeted, 3.5 targets per game. This is a good roll. Two red zone rushes per game, 0.5 red zone targets. Rachaad White, though, I still think not a great player. But honestly, I think he belongs in this Mixon Jacobs tier right now. Just a guy getting pretty good work. Feels like Sean Tucker could threaten him, but I don't think Tucker's really good either. So not a whole lot there. Rashad Penny. Rashad Penny was always an analytics darling and his previous stops, of course, in Seattle. Now negative 0.3 EPA per rush, 0.02 EPA per pass. Hasn't avoided a single tackle yet in the run game or the pass game. Fuck. I don't think he's as bad of a player as I'm going to rank him here, but Rashad Penny, I think, belongs in this tier. Is he? I can't put him lower than Deuce Vaughn. He's still better than Deuce Vaughn because he's like an adult-sized man who can do adult-sized man things. But he's not in a good situation yet, and probably needs an injury now to get there, which sucks. Ramondre was somebody I did fade coming into the year. Just didn't think the volume was going to hold up in the same way. It is holding up pretty well. 18 intended touches per game, 56 snaps per game, negative 0.1 EPA per rush, negative 0.25 EPA per pass. He's okay there. He's avoiding tackles basically where he was last year, 15% rate. The red zone work is better than you would think with Zeke. 2.5 red zone rushes per game, 0.5 inside the 5. Okay roll for Ramondre. Don't think he's an outlier. He belongs in this Rachaad White, Josh Jacobs area as well. Just again, these are the guys here. If I'm going to point to them, these are guys that probably don't hurt you. These are guys that also some weeks will probably not help you, but the volume being there makes them in play every week. So if you're going to try to isolate this area, that's what I would try to, how to define those guys would be the best way to put that. Roshan, 0.15 EPA per rush, 0.01 EPA per pass, better than Khalil Herbert in both metrics. 9 intended touches per game, 25.5 snaps. So hopefully on the way up there. Avoiding tackles at an 11% clip. He was basically flat with Bijan in Texas, so you'd like to see that number get a little higher. Maybe it will with the volume. 12.5% avoided tackles on pass plays. 1 red zone rush per game. Roshan's going to have better days, but I think he's basically a slightly better Khalil Herbert right now. And honestly, yeah, the spot's a little bit worse for him. So Roshan, let's move him there. Saquon out for at least 3 weeks, it looks like, with an ankle sprain. Apparently an ordinary ankle sprain, not a high ankle sprain, but still Saquon just fucking mediocre as can be, as always. Negative 0.02 EPA per rush, negative 0.5 EPA per pass. But of course, he gets 20 touches per game. That is the one saving grace for him. If I were going to rank Barkley, he's just in this fucking tier of mediocre guys, and actually a little bit worse than all of them, I think. The opportunity for Matt Breida and Eric Gray, though, is pretty huge. Breida, at least a positive EPA rusher in a small sample size. That could mean that he has some value. I don't know how the timeshare is going to work with Breida and Eric Gray, because Eric Gray was a guy that stood out from what he did in college. So I think they're going to lean on Breida at first, but it wouldn't shock me to see Gray earn enough of a share. So I think for this week, I would probably put Breida right where you put Saquon. Just don't have a ton of faith overall in Saquon, but I think Breida might end up being better than Saquon. Like if he gets 20 touches a game, he might end up performing better than Saquon, and it would not be a shocker. So I think Breida for Thursday Night Football, tough matchup against the Niners, but I think in play for that game. Tank Bigsby is not going to be pretty either. Negative 0.08 EPA per rush. He didn't get any targets in week 2, so his really shitty week 1 holds up. Negative 6.9 EPA per target. Tank's workload, 8 intended touches per game. He is currently a worse version of these rookies who have not played yet. Tank goes in here, but he is getting red zone work, right? He had 2 red zone touches per game. Tank goes here because it's a better spot, but he's playing like dog shit. Tank has not given us anything that looked too good. Let's not have a boom football disaster this week. There's always a boom football disaster somewhere on the horizon, including the fact that I cannot get this video done in under 2 hours, but the process is the process. We got to do it. Tony Pollard, here's a guy that should be going in that top right corner. Oh, negative 0.1 EPA per rush. So a little bit behind average there. 0.06, 0.05 EPA per pass. That's pretty good. 25 intended touches, though. You cannot ignore that in 46.5 snaps. Fucking 8 red zone rushes per game for Tony Pollard. 3.5 inside the 5-yard line. So he's not being terribly efficient with his red zone work. But he is getting ungodly amounts of it, and 1.5 red zone targets per game. This is the best spot in the league right now. Player, he's okay. I don't think he's as great as some of these other guys. I think he's right here in this Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, DeAndre Swift tier, but the work is the best in the league right now. So Tony Pollard benefiting from the work, but not quite as good of a player. 5.5% avoided tackle rate on run plays, 11% avoided tackle rate on pass plays. Like he's not going to be as effective. He's not going to be as fun when he's playing this much volume. So something to watch out for just because the volume can be elusive. If a guy gets banged up, if a guy is not effective, but I don't know who they're going to replace him with. So no risk on that front. ATN, negative 0.07 EPA per rush, negative 0.3 EPA per pass, 19 touches per game. So that is pretty close to a great spot. Besides Tank Bigsby, I guess theoretically breathing down his neck. ATN not avoiding tackles too well, 13% avoided tackle rate, 14% on pass plays, 1.5 red zone rushes, none inside the 5. Good volume spot, not a great red zone work spot. He goes into this morass of guys getting pretty good work and not doing too much with it. And I honestly think he might be slightly worse than Saquon. Just ATN, not one of my guys, and somebody that I think belongs in this tier, but not a good, not a superior player by any stretch. Tyjae Spears, 0.27 EPA per rush, negative 0.6 EPA per pass. So he has been a lot less effective catching passes than Derrick Henry, even though they're giving him a lot of that work, running 11.5 routes per game. Shifty as could be, though, when he's getting a rush, 45.5% avoided tackle rate there. He was also a really high avoided tackle rate guy when catching a pass in college. He's not doing that at all in the pros so far. 0 avoided tackles, not getting any red zone work, 0.5 red zone targets per game. Tyjae, I think he's got to go here in this tier of guys. I got to show more. I think he's basically a slightly better Tank Bigsby. That's where we're going to put him here as the dog is there. My dog is an old 13-year-old dog, and she's been unfortunately having bladder issues lately. So I'm like, fuck, please don't pee in the studio. That's what I'm really hoping for throughout the course of this video. Tyler Algier, big step backwards in week 2, unfortunately for me and for all the Algier stands out there. Tyler down to a negative 0.06 EPA per rush, negative 0.13 EPA per pass. He was so great in these metrics last year. Still at 17 intended touches per game, 32.5 snaps. Kind of worry, though, that as they build trust in Bijan, it's going to get worse for Algier, but he still does have 4 red zone rushes per game, 1.5 inside the 5. So the role's pretty good. He's got to play better. He's in this A.J. Dillon Madison tier, I think, for now. Last year, he was closer to this Eckler tier in terms of performance per touch, per snap. For right now, though, he's got to show more, or he's risking getting lapped by Bijan entirely. Charbonnet has not done much. Charbonnet, 0.12 EPA per rush. So he's basically right there with Kenneth Walker, a little bit better. Technically 15.5. So he's getting more snaps than I thought. 15.5 snaps per game, 4.5 intended touches. He's had a 43% avoided tackle rate so far. Charbonnet actually looking like he's got some juice. So that's good. 1 red zone rush per game, 0.5 inside the 5 per game. Charbonnet is in this tier, but the better end of it, because he's actually put something on tape that looks pretty good. So Charbonnet, let's put right here. All these guys here, like these three, Mitchell, A-Chain, Kendre, I guess Tank to a lesser extent as well, but Charbonnet, these guys all can make a move up here as the chaos of the season kicks in. So I wouldn't worry for best ball shares. Obviously, I'm speaking mostly to myself here. Wouldn't worry about your best ball shares for these guys. But really for right now, they're just very much behind the other guys ahead of them on these various backfields. Where's Raheem Mostert? This list is a little bit alphabetically weird, is what I've observed. Raheem Mostert, go down here. Great week in week 2. Not Zach Moss, sorry. Mostert. 0.18 EPA per rush, 0.26 EPA per pass, so analytic, very good. 15.5 intended touches per game is not a great spot. 14% avoided tackle rate, though, for an older guy who's mostly just a straight line burner. That's a pretty nice start for Raheem Mostert, actually. What's his red zone work? 2.5 red zone rushes per game, 1 inside the 5 per game, 0.5 red zone targets per game. It's a pretty good spot. Good player, pretty good spot. I think he's on the spectrum of Dylan, Algier, Alexander Madison, but better than them. Not quite Kenneth Walker tier, not quite Colts running back tier in terms of the workload. But I think this is looking pretty good. Dog with a bladder issue easily becomes the official mascot of the Squirt Squad. Yeah, I don't know that Penny would be a great mascot because she is an ornery old pit bull mix, but I do like that theoretically. Gus Edwards there. Let's rank Gus. Gus Edwards, 0.2 EPA per rush, flat 0 EPA per target, 9 intended touches overall. Obviously got more in week 2. Not avoiding tackles, but still 2.3 yards after contact. And Gus has 0.5 red zone rushes per game, 0.5 inside the 5 per game. Obviously converted one of those into a touchdown. I guess that would be his only touch that he converted into a touchdown in week 2. Okay, workload for Gus. I think Gus has got to go here. He's in this Pacheco range. Honestly, he and Pacheco, not dissimilar. I'll give him slightly less good work, but he and Pacheco look very similar to me. This is a good one from Nolan here. Every time you say on the spectrum, I get flashbacks to my first grade teacher talking to my mom. Nolan, a big lover of trains, I'm sure. Lover of trains and puzzle pieces is old Nolan. I think this is it. I think these are all the running backs we really have to rank. Josh Kelly. How did Josh Kelly look? Obviously, against Tennessee, that was a tough matchup. Kelly on the year, 0.07 EPA per rush. Really bad catching passes. I do not expect Kelly to get the work that Eckler did on that front. Negative 0.95 EPA per pass. Only getting 1 target per game. Has not got a catch on the year. Kelly's workload, I mean, it's got to be better than it was that week. Kelly, not a superior player. I think he kind of goes in here. He's in this range. Maybe a little better than Dylan. Yeah, I think he's a little better than Dylan in terms of the workload and the opportunity. So a better spot, but definitely not a superior player. Raheem Mostert's better than him by, I think, a decent margin. So Josh Kelly goes in there, and you can see the difference. Here's Eckler. Here's Kelly. And honestly, Eckler should have even a better spot. Oh, we're accounting for his injury. So yeah, let's put him right there. No Brian Robinson. Brian Robinson is buried over here. He is in a great spot, but not a great player. But yeah, unfortunately, that's the one thing here. I can't highlight these guys perfectly because the images take up a little too much space. But Brian Robinson safely somewhere right here. And then Kyren Williams. Got to do Kyren. How can we not do Kyren? Okay, Kyren. 0.15 EPA per rush. That's actually very good. Better than I would have thought. Negative 0.4 EPA per pass. Not good. Avoiding tackles at a 7% rate. Not good. 20.5 touches. 64.5. That is so many fucking snaps. He is a pure volume back. I hate volume backs, and he's not good. He's not good. He's just getting a lot of work. But anyway, 7% avoided tackle rate, not good. 5.5 red zone rushes, 1 rush inside the 5-yard line per game, 1.5 red zone targets per game. This is the best spot in the league right now for Kyren Williams. He's not deserving of it. He's not as good of a player as you would hope for, but he's not a superior player. This is the best spot in the league. He's better than Derrick Henry in terms of the usage. He's not quite Tony Pollard in terms of the usage, but he's right next to it. This is where Kyren Williams goes. There could be a downslide. Like, I think when you see this much volume, there could be a downslide, but this is like such deliberate will to force the ball to a guy who's like, okay, like he's just a dude. Which is why I didn't draft him, is because he's just a dude. But this is the tough part, is that guys getting volume. Can't argue with guys getting volume. Fuck. That's I wanted like Kyren to be actually good to justify it, but I just don't see it. I just don't see it right now. All right, time to go to the receivers. Time to go. We're an hour and a half in. I thought this would be shorter this week, and we are trending to basically the exact same time. But of course, in between each ranking, I have to ask you guys to please subscribe. Please subscribe. Hit the like button, please, as well. This is hard. It's not easy to talk through all this stuff and try to make salient points, but I'm doing it. So help a brother out, subscribe, and of course, go check out Probably. Go ahead, go to probably.com. Just go click around. Go click for roughly 80 to 100 page views on probably.com. Check it out. Of course, we do track the top probabilities from the top winningest markets around the world. We give you guys a true probability. You can evaluate your live legal sportsbook opportunities in the US. So check that out. It is a tool that will help you, if not win more money, will absolutely help you lose less money. That's the goal at Probably. So go check it out at probably.com. That is my baby, my beautiful baby boy, AJ Brown. All right, let's go to receivers. I got to filter this again. Fucking Kyren Williams, man. That one really chafes my ass. All right, Kyren. Oh no, Kyren. All right, AJ Brown. Kyren is in my head now because I do not have enough shares of him. AJ Brown. 0.2 EPA per pass, 67 snaps per game, only 7.5 intended touches. Is not a high target per route run rate. Actually, no, his target per route run rate's okay. So he's just not running enough routes. He's running 31 routes per game, 24% target per route run rate, which is like tight end adjacent. So he's getting targeted pretty well for what his route outlay is. 1.5 deep targets per game is not converted one, but getting 64.5 intended air yards on that. Things are going to run better for AJ Brown. Good player. Spot's going to get better, though it's definitely not a great spot. Let's put him right here. Put him right here. That feels about right. We can't get too much SPAGs. No worries. I think, boy, I'm glad somebody out there believes that. Squirt that like button. Yes, indeed. Squirt that like button. And the goal is always to lose less money until you get lucky enough to win money. That is true. But for betting especially, I think it's also just about knowing what the best bet is out there and not taking bad bets. So that's why for me, probably, I think if you are a person that plays sports bets, and somebody like me too, where I play sports bets to prop up my DFS bankroll, to prop up my best ball bankroll, I certainly would try to use Probably. But yeah, I'm biased. I have to admit that. 0.3 EPA per target for Amari Cooper. 54.5 routes per game, 8.5 intended touches per game. That all looks good. He's not, let's see, is he avoiding tackles at all? Not avoiding tackles, but that's not really Amari Cooper's game. Honestly, Amari looks great. Amari's a dude that I love, and I'm going to continue to do so. And I do think he could rise a little bit more with the Tide, just because of not having Nick Chubb out there. Should see more red zone targets. Seeing 1 per game right now wouldn't shock me to see that get closer to 2, including some inside the 5 maybe. So Amari Cooper, I think a slightly better spot than AJ Brown, but similar players. But I'll put them here so they don't fully overlap. Amon-Ra St. Brown, got to watch out for his turf toe potential injury. I'll see if he is okay in practice. I've not seen the reports yet. 0.3 EPA per target, though. 8 targets per game, 57.5 snaps. Getting 1 deep target per game has caught them whenever he's gotten targeted there. 1 red zone target per game. The part that I worry about with Amon-Ra is I think that Josh Reynolds, I've said this before, I believe when we talked about Josh Reynolds on one of the videos this week, I think that Josh Reynolds is hurting Amon-Ra St. Brown's opportunity a little bit because he's playing above his head and he is very much a Jared Goff safety blankie throughout multiple stops in his career. So I think that's not great for Amon-Ra. But I think he's a better player based on what he's done so far this year than both these guys. Pretty close though. I'm going to put him in a slightly better spot than both guys, slightly better player than both guys, but it's all pretty close. Like I don't really view these guys that differently overall. Brandon Cooks hurt with his knee injury, 0.23 EPA per target, but only getting 4 targets per game so far. Nothing really looking like an outlier. He doesn't avoid tackles. Cooks is just a receiver. He's going to be our middle flag here. Here's the guy that's on the thumbnail. You know why Brandon Ayuk is on the thumbnail? Let's talk about why Brandon Ayuk is on the thumbnail. He is getting 6.5 targets per game on 44 routes. He's catching 5.5 of them. He is converting that for a 1.2 EPA, which is insane because this isn't Rashid Shaheed. Rashid Shaheed led the entire NFL last year with like a 0.75 EPA per target, but he was getting all these downfield targets. He was breaking these 50-yard touchdowns. Like that was the way they were using him. Ayuk is just a straight receiver. He is just a guy who's running routes out there, but he's fantastic doing it. 27% target per route run rate for him as well. Not getting as much red zone work as he could get, but 1.5 red zone targets per game. Not getting as many deep shots as he could get, 0.5 there. But the fact that he's creating this much value as not a downfield target is insane. So this is not one of the best spots in the league, but right now at receiver, this is the best receiver in the league. Which I know, everyone's go, oh, like I love Justin Jefferson. I love all these guys. With what Ayuk is doing, with what I'll say the right one of these times, with what Ayuk is doing every single time he gets targeted, for right now, he's fucking amazing. Like it doesn't make sense how good he is with the way that that he plays with how they're using him. So Ayuk deserves all the respect in the world. That's why he's on the thumbnail behind me. He is that dude right now, and it's gonna come down. Like it's gonna regress, but like 2 games of this is fucking crazy. Like he shouldn't be that good per touch. Like it just doesn't make sense. Ayuk didn't practice today. It's questionable for Thursday. There you go. So we'll move him slightly here. Less of a great spot because he's currently injured, but he's still the fucking best analytics receiver in football. You can't argue that. Other side of the equation here, Calvin Ridley, negative 0.04 EPA per target. So getting a lot of targets at 9.5 per game, only catching 5 of them. A lot of air yards, I think. No, not even a lot of air yards. 105.5 air yards per game. 1.5 deep shots per game. Yeah, if Lawrence gets better, Ridley's going to get better. He's getting 2.5 red zone targets per game. So this is an elite workload. He just hasn't been as good as these guys. So Ridley here, probably the best receiver spot we've covered so far. I'll leave a little room for a better receiver spot because I do think Justin Jefferson is like a better receiver spot overall. But Ridley, I think not playing as great as people want to tell you he's playing. But the volume, getting that much volume, hard to ignore. And again, he'll get better if we do see Trevor Lawrence get better. Cedric Tillman, I don't even know why he's here. Cedric Tillman, we're just not going to rank Cedric Tillman. I won't disrespect Cedric Tillman by giving him a rank when he hasn't even had time to do anything. CeeDee Lamb looks fantastic. 0.8 EPA per target for CeeDee Lamb, getting 8.5 per game, catching 7.5 of them. You would expect that to come down a little bit. 88% catch rate, not the most likely. The air yards are dog shit, though. 63 air yards per game. So he is getting really shitty targets. He's not getting high volume, high value downfield targets, 0.5 deep targets per game. So he's only gotten 1 in his 2 games. And he's great when he's getting them 1.5 EPA on those deep targets. But this is what we talked about in the offseason with Dallas's offense being so regressive. It's been a benefit for Tony Pollard. It's been a benefit for the efficiency. It is not a benefit for giving this guy a great spot. So he's playing really well. I think he's playing about as well as anybody who's not Brandon Ayuk. But he's got to go behind these guys because the volume's not there and he's not being used like as a stretch player, which is where he's going to have the best value for himself. So CeeDee Lamb playing about as well as he can, but the opportunity is pretty shitty. Chase Claypool, negative 0.6 EPA per target, 5 targets per game, catching 1.5 of them. This is just ugly. No, he got that touchdown, got 1 red zone target. Chase Claypool's usage is, I guess, okay. Brandon Cooksey, he stinks though. Chase Claypool, we're going to put at the bottom. He's a mid player, getting okay volume, okay workload. Chris Godwin has not benefited as much as Mike Evans, but still looking pretty good. 0.4 EPA per target on 7 targets per game. Only 54.5. No, actually, no. Only 57.5 air yards per game, so that's not too good. 1 deep target for him. He's caught half of them per game. 1.5 red zone targets. So okay usage. Pretty good player. Not as good as CD, not as good of a spot as CD. Let's put him safely behind CD, but still he's performing well with what he's getting. So can't argue with Godwin on that front. I'm going to rank Mike Evans real fast too, just because I do think It goes hand in hand with Godwin, obviously. Mike Evans is playing out of his fucking mind. 0.72 EPA per target on 9 targets per game. He's also getting 112.5 air yards per game. I would have thought that was more. 2.5 deep targets per game from Baker. All of them have been catchable. Every ball that's gone his way has been catchable. So when that does get a little bit worse for Baker, it's going to be not quite as good for Evans, but a 1.7 EPA on his deep targets. Mike Evans is playing out of his fucking mind. I don't think this usage holds up, but I do think he deserves for right now to be not, I mean, honestly, I guess numerically he is as good as CD, and it's a better role because he's getting downfield. So we're going to put Evans right here. He is in this upper echelon, playing really well. I think the spot gets a little bit worse as we go. But the downfield usage, downfield targets, that is gold for wide receivers. And if Evans is going to keep getting them and convert him at a similar rate, I think it's going to bode pretty well. 0.28 EPA per target for Chris Olave, 10.5 targets per game, on 130. Is that right? 132 air yards per game for Olave, so that's really good. 2.5 deep targets per game, 80 of them, and the intended air yards that he's getting on those targets. Red zone targets, he's getting 1 per game. Olave's got a nice role. Good performance. He deserves to be in this tier. He deserves to be actually slightly better spot, I think, than all these guys. Olave's paying off. This bodes well for Chris Olave. 100% bodes well for Chris Olave. Christian Kirk got back on track this week with 1 pretty decent game, but still negative 0.02 EPA per pass overall. He's up to 8.5 targets, but the depth of those targets is really bad. 46 air yards per game, only 0.5 deep targets. He's basically fancy Elijah Moore in this offense. I don't love that as a spot. I don't love him as a player. I think he is currently a slightly better spot than Brandon Cooks. Slightly better player than Brandon Cooks. Yeah, we'll put Kirk right here. That feels right to me. Christian Watson. Christian Watson, we can't go off of any numbers. Still think he's in a good spot. We'll see what he does. We talked about Jordan Love earlier, but I'm going to put Christian Watson here. We need to see him perform well again, but numerically with his EPA numbers, he would probably go with this tier of guys. But let's see what he does this week. I'll put him on the spectrum in the middle, and the middle in terms of a great spot as well. But I really think Watson, if he can get back out there this week, I think looks pretty good. Cooper Kupp, we'll keep him off the list for now because I think Puka is actually in this one, so we can rank Puka on his own. Cortland Sutton, better than I would think. 0.3 EPA per target, only 6 of them per game, so the volume is not there. Not getting much in the way of deep shots either. 0 deep shots so far going his way. 1.5 red zone targets per game is pretty okay. Cortland Sutton, better player than Cooks. Not too different of an opportunity. Worse than Christian Kirk in terms of the opportunity. So I think that's where Sutton should go. Darnell Mooney, I don't think did anything this past week. Mooney now down to a negative 0.5 EPA per target, 3.5 targets per game, so bad usage. Is getting 1 deep target per game deep, but I think they were all in the first game, so that's why he's coming down so much. If Mooney's not going to get deep targets every game, it's not a great spot for him. I think he's also, again, if the EPA numbers are coming down, we got to bump him down here. So I think this is where Mooney goes, unfortunately. I think he is better than this. I think he deserves better than this opportunity overall. Better than Chase Claypool, but he's not shown it so far. And let's do DJ Moore too. Where's DJ? DJ Moore, 0.75 EPA per target, only 4.5 targets per game. DJ Moore is playing a lot better than he did last year, obviously with a lot less work so far, so we'll see how that goes. Avoiding tackles as well, 25% avoided tackle rate when he's catching the ball. 1 deep target per game is catching all 1 of them. DJ Moore, where are you at? I think not great workload, better than Chris Godwin. If the target share can get up, and if Fields can be competent, DJ Moore is going to have some big weeks. It would not shock me to see him move more towards Mike Evans if the volume can increase. So DJ Moore, do not throw him out with the bathwater, so to speak. Devontae Adams. Wow, Devontae looking great. 0.65 EPA per target, 8.5 targets per game. Target per route run rate of 33%. Air yards, 98.5 air yards per game. 0.5 deep shots per game. So Jimmy G not pressing it downfield, but still giving okay air yards overall. And 1 red zone target per game. Great workload. great player, great workload. He's not quite Ayuk in terms of the overall performance. He's getting slightly less volume than Olave. He's here in the Amon-Ra, St. Brown, Amari Cooper, AJ Brown area, and Chris Olave. These are all the guys here in this top right corner. Wait, I'm pointing the wrong way. This top right corner. Those are the guys that I think I'd really plant a flag for. Mike Evans just had his 2 best matchups of the year. I would say even more so, Baker Mayfield had his best 2 matchups of the year. So I do expect that to regress. But again, we're talking about what these guys have done so far. And Evans, if he's going to get just deep shots, you can go against tough teams. As long as you're getting deep shots, gives him a chance. So Evans, I do think Evans, though, ends up coming down. If not performance-wise, I think he ends up coming closer to here at some point soon. Shout out Ben, late but finally made this one live again. Shout out to all you guys hanging out here, whether you are here for the entire journey of ranking every player or a part of it. I appreciate it. But either way, this will be our Wednesdays moving forward. So strap in, folks. It's gonna be a long fucking year on Wednesdays. DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Dusty. Negative 0.1 EPA per target on 9 targets per game, only catching 5.5 of them. Has not avoided a single tackle, which is not a surprise because he basically is a catch and fall down guy. Getting 0.5 deep targets per game, 1 red zone target per game. Pretty good usage, pretty mid player. Worse than average. The usage is not far off from Ridley, but it's a lot less effective. I think Hopkins goes right here. Debo had a great week in week 2. Benefited from the injuries, the banged upness of Brandon Ayuk. 0.14 EPA per target for Debo. He's getting 11.5 intended touches per game. 8 of those are targets. The rest of them coming in the run game. He's also getting a deep shot per game, so that bodes pretty well long-term. 0.5 red zone rushes per game. 0.5 red zone targets per game. Pretty good spot. Kind of Chris Godwin-y spot, I think. Obviously, Chris Godwin with the rushing upside for Debo is going to be more in play. I think Debo goes right here. He's blocking Godwin out, but consider the way I view it, Chris Godwin and Debo, very similar plays. Debo actually probably slightly better spot because the team is better. Okay. So many D names. So many D names. Devontae Smith. How are you doing, Devontae? 0.36 EPA per target. So basically where he was last year, that is good. 7.5 targets per game, catching 5.5 of them, getting 2.5 deep shots per game. So he is getting fed a little better than AJ Brown. 110.5 air yards per game, also better than AJ Brown. He might be the actual wide receiver 1 for Philadelphia. He's got to go right. Like he and AJ Brown are right now the exact same player. So Devontae goes in that top receiver echelon. I think he deserves it. Deontay Johnson, we'll leave him out, but not great for Deontay. We'll just say that. Metcalf. Wow, DK Metcalf is going fucking nuts so far. 0.8 EPA per target for DK Metcalf, 5.5 intended touches. Would certainly like to see the target share go up for him. Getting 1 deep target per game, though, that is pretty good for him. 1.5 red zone targets per game. That's also pretty good for him. Good spot, really needs more volume, though. He is DJ Morey right now. A little more targets, and Geno's playing better than Field, so I will put him ahead of DJ Moore in terms of the spot. But that workload has got to increase. It's got to increase. So actually, you say Wednesday. That's how I say Wednesday in the South. Wednesday? I don't know. I'm a Northerner. I don't know. Happy Wednesday to you. that just sounds insulting to the people of the South. So I don't think I'm the right guy to go to for your Wednesday pronunciations. Donovan Peoples-Jones, mid. Negative 0.6 EPA per target. He's playing 71 snaps per game and only getting 2.5 targets. That is awful. These are awful numbers for Donovan Peoples-Jones. He's also not getting any deep targets. Was that the Southern Belle? The Southern Belle's not here right now. She only comes whenever I can block my face out and we can hide. But she would say Wednesday in an adorable way, though. You'd all gravitate towards. Peoples-Jones, though, bad work. Playing poorly. Peoples-Jones is the inverse of an apex predator. He is currently playing the worst out of all the receivers so far based on usage, based on opportunity. The good news, he's running a lot of routes. So actually, I guess in that respect, he shouldn't be the nut worst because he's 71 snaps per game is pretty good. But you got to do something out there. You can't just be running wind sprints. So no, thank you. Drake London. Champagne Poppy. Drake London, 0.28 EPA per target, 57 snaps per game. 4 targets per game. Obviously, that includes the week 1 where he's totally not involved. 1 red zone target per game, 0.5 inside the 5 per game. It's tough because we do have to roll week 1 into this, so the spot can't be that good. But if it's closer to week 2 than week 1, Drake's actually going to be okay, I think. So he's in this Debo tier. I'd put him a little bit ahead of Debo because I think if there is any market share for receivers, Drake London's going to get it. So Drake, honestly, not that far off from these guys, but you need to see him get that workload every week. That's the part where I think it's just not a great spot for Drake London, but still looking pretty good. Elijah Moore, guy who could benefit with the lack of running backs just because he will be a low ADOT guy to get some easy targets out to. But he stinks. Negative 0.4 EPA per target. Avoiding tackles at a 17% clip when he is getting targeted. He is getting a few rushes per game, 1.5 rushes per game, but only 1 red zone target. Like 9 targets per game is good, but if they're shitty targets, it just doesn't do a whole lot for me. So I'll give him, I think this is like a Christian Kirky spot, but he's a worse player. So we'll put him right here. Gabe Davis. I think you're going to be surprised by Gabe Davis's numbers from what I saw glimpsing over. 0.6 EPA per target for Gabe, 61.5 snaps, 5.5 targets, 0.5 of which are in the red zone, 0.5 of which per game are within the 5-yard line. He's also getting 1 deep target per game. This is Gabe. This is Gabe doing Gabe things. High upside still, just the volume is not going to be there. As a result, I think he is slightly less good spot than Chris Godwin, but a similarly good player. Gabe Davis goes right there. Garrett Wilson, these numbers might be not pretty. No, this is Michael Wilson. Yeah, no, these are not pretty. Negative 0.25 EPA per target for Garrett Wilson, 6.5 per game. 1 deep target per game is not connected on it yet. He is getting 1 red zone target and 0.5 inside the 5-yard line per game. It's not great. This is not great for Garrett Wilson. He is a slightly better spot than Chris Godwin, but playing pretty poorly right now. Garrett Wilson currently looking like the less great spot version of DeAndre Hopkins to me. Honestly, I think he goes right here. It's not even as close to Hopkins. Hopkins is getting more volume too. This is not the run out you wanted for Garrett Wilson, I would think. George Pickens, 0.12 EPA per target, which you think would be better, but I guess he's not catching enough of them. 8.5 targets per game on 51 snaps, catching 4.5. Does have an 11% avoided tackle rate. That one big play that we saw on Monday night, I think, is the thing of hope for Pickens because he could not get yards after the catch last year. That's going to give him upside alone. Pickett being fucking just at least as averagey as he was last year will also bode well for Pickens. Pickens is yet to convert on a deep shot of 20-plus air yards, so that is also something he's going to have some upside in. He's getting 1 red zone target per game as well. Pickens is in a pretty good spot, and I do think he is a good player who should get better EPA-wise, but he hasn't shown it yet. Think a little better spot, a little bit worse player than Drake London for now. I think that feels right for Pickens, but with that performance, though, fantasy-wise, like he might be one of those guys that analytically doesn't look quite as good as last year, but could be a better fantasy performer because of the volume, because of the opportunity, at least while we see Deontay Johnson out. Jahan Dotson not playing too great. Negative 0.1 EPA per target, 6 targets per game. Is getting 62 snaps, which is good, but only a 16% target per route run rate. This offense is just not doing him a lot of favors. This is a pretty poor spot. Poor spot per performance for Dotson. Ugh. Better than Mooney. He's better than Mooney in terms of the spot. But yeah, this is not the rollout you want for Dotson either. Could get better. We'll see. Jacoby Myers, hopefully coming out of concussion protocol. He looked great in week 1, 0.4 EPA per target, 1.5. Wait, is that right? That's Keenan Allen. No deep targets, but he did have 3 red zone targets, including 2 inside the 5. So still a pretty good spot for Jacoby Myers if we assume it'll be net neutral. It was in week 1. I don't think it will be. Adams is going to draw more attention overall. That was a tough matchup week 1 for Adams going against Patrick Surtain. So Jacoby Myers, I think, let's put him right here. And again, this is also kind of accounting for the concussion stuff. I think he's in a Godwin Debo-ish spot, but clearly, much like Godwin and Debo, there's a better receiver there that they should go to more. Why is Ayuk in top quad? He may not even play this week. It's just about what they've done so far. Yeah. So it doesn't change what he's done, but you have to give guys their flowers. And then obviously if Ayuk is out, then you can move Debo up a little bit higher. But we're just talking about what guys have done and assuming that if they were to play. But for guys with injuries, yeah, like I do bump it back a little bit more. It's a touchy, it's touch and go process. We're figuring it out. Jalen Hyatt, is this even worth it? I guess he did have some okay plays. Jalen Hyatt's doing what he did at Tennessee, 1.5 EPA per target, but only getting 1.5 per game. If he gets the workload, the EPA is going to come down, but obviously the overall opportunity will come up. He's getting 44 air yards per game despite getting no targets, 2.5 EPA when he is targeted, 20 plus air yards. Hyatt is doing what he did in college. He's actually, so in terms of these metrics, he's playing incredibly well, but the spot is awful. So, but it is a deep target. He's playing out of his mind. It's just he's playing out of his mind with 1.5 targets, so doesn't matter. Jamar Chase. This is going to be ugly. Jamar, where are you at? Honestly, could be worse. 0.01 EPA per target, which is actually better than he did last year. Last year, Jamar Chase was a negative EPA per target guy, just had the pure volume. He's got 9 targets per game, 2 red zone targets per game, 0.5 inside the 5-yard line per game. Is getting half a deep shot as well. But Joe Burrow, as we talked about earlier, not great with him so far. So Jamar Chase, good spot. Ridley adjacent here, but he's playing a little bit better than Ridley. Jamar Chase goes right there. Jameson Williams, we won't rank. Smith and Jigba, this is probably going to be not great for him. Smith. Oops. Smith and Jigba, where are you at? Negative 0.2 EPA per target. That is way worse than he was in college, but he's only getting 5.5 targets per game, converting 4 of them. A really poor ADOT as well, 9.5 air yards per game for JSN. You cannot produce if you're getting that shitty of a target load at that bad of an air yard share. He is playing like these guys. This is a bad run out for JSN as well. Not what you want to see for him. Jaden Reed, 0.2 EPA per target, 7 targets per game, catching 3.5 of them, only running 30 snaps per game on 17 routes. You want to see that increase, and it probably will not with Christian Watson coming back. So that's tough for Reed, tough needle to thread in terms of the spot, but he's doing great with whatever he's getting targeted overall. Not great downfield so far, negative 0.7 EPA per target and throws of 20+ yards, but he's getting 1.5 red zone targets per game, so that's pretty good. The spot, man. So like there's a lot of upside with how he's getting used, but if he's going to get less routes, that's a little bit tough. I think he goes right here. He's playing well, but the opportunity is not great. It's kind of the inverse of Jahan Dotson, where Dotson's looking poor with poor opportunity. Reed's looking good with poor opportunity. But I think it's about right for Jaden Reed. Jalen Waddle. Waddle also banged up. Hopefully he'll be able to go, but he's crushing it again. 0.7 EPA per target. So he's in that Rashid Shaheed last year tier. 2 deep targets per game, converting one of them per game. 1.5 of them are catchable. So that is also looking pretty good. No red zone usage for him. Target per out run rate is not great for Waddle. It does feel like Waddle, something's got to change in kind of the feng shui of Miami for Waddle to reach his true upside, or just the focus on Tyreek Hill makes it tough for Waddle to hit a ceiling. Waddle's kind of like the fancy version of these guys, like a really good version of these guys, but I think he's more of a better version of Gabe Davis. So I'm going to put him right here for now. Would love to see him get to this range, but it feels like he won't unless Tyreek goes out. So that's tough. Yeah, I don't know that Waddle can make a big move, but he can still have big days though. If you're that effective per touch, you can have big days. It just gets a little bit harder because you do need the volume plus being effective per touch to really, kind of the ceiling that I would like to have. Jerry Jeudy played last week. Didn't do a whole lot. Negative 0.4 EPA per target. 5 targets, did play 45 snaps, ran 34 routes. That all bodes well, but the usage, kind of nothing. No red zone targets either. Jeudy belongs with these guys for now. A little bit of a better spot. It'll get better for him. There we go. Don't care about that chat. Mingo, Jonathan Mingo. Negative 0.5, Mingo is in the hunt to be one of the worst guys. Negative 0.5 EPA per target, 63 snaps per game, 6.5 intended touches per game. He's getting 2 deep shots, but awful with them. Negative 0.7 EPA on those plays. Mingo, not going to be the bottom overall, not going to be going over here. Okay spot with a little bit more upside probably than some of these guys have right now, but he's worse with it. So I'm going to put Mingo in this Bermuda Triangle of dudes that do not appeal to me too much. All right. Trade Swift and Evans for Jamar Chase. Did I win? No, it's probably net neutral. Could be better. Could be worse. I find people like, no offense to you're a BXM, but like I find it so interesting. Like you're coming to ask that trade. And I know he's just going around from like live stream to live stream going like, what do you think of this trade? And it's like, what do you want out of that experience? Like I'm genuinely curious to know because it does not part of my brain psychology. But like, do you just want people to go like, yeah, really fucking sick trade, man? Or I don't know. Like who gives a fuck? Jordan Addison. Wait, sorry. Like, I don't mean to be rude to new people coming in here, but I know the game at this point. 0.7 EPA per target for Jordan Addison. 76 air yards per game. 0.5 red zone targets per game. Addison playing well. Usage needs to get better. He's a little bit better than Jalen Waddle in terms of usage. So Jordan Addison, but yeah, honestly, Addison playing way better than I thought. Give him credit. Just want validation. Yeah. I guess that's it. Yes. Is that what I should just do? It's just whatever, no matter what they do, this will be the bit for all of our splash play regulars. Whenever one of these guys comes in and I don't know the name and they're doing that shit, I'm just gonna go like, that's a really fucking sick move, man. I'm going to hype them up, and that's what it's going to be the way I approach this. So stay tuned for whenever we get the next one. I'm going to start rolling that out. I have to remind myself to do it because my natural inclination is to go like, who fucking cares? But I am going to start to try to go, yeah, man, that's fucking awesome. Kudos to you. Reminds me of small talk with my kids, friends, parents, useless and boring. That is a good way to sum it up. But hey, man, sick fucking trade, though. You really crushed that one. Josh Downs, perfectly okay. 0.2 EPA per target, 6 targets per game. Better version of the other guys that we've talked about in this rookie tier. Not quite Jaden Reed usage, but not far off. Josh Downs goes there. Wiped my ass this morning. Did I do good, Daddy? Your ass looks great today. You did a fantastic job wiping it. Juju Smith-Schuster. Juju is a fucking bust and a half. Could be worse, though. Negative 0.06 EPA per pass, 6.5 targets per game, 0.5 red zone targets per game. This fucking Patriots offense is just dog shit for everybody besides Hunter Henry. Juju, I think, slightly better usage than Brandon Cooks. Basically the same player. He goes next to Cortland Sutton, and that's probably being generous for Juju Smith-Schuster. Justin Jefferson, just that dude. 13 targets a game, converting 10 of them. He's a monster. I don't know, 2 deep targets per game, converting 1.5 of them. Every single one that's catchable, he's catching. The red zone work could be better for an elite wide receiver, just 0.5 red zone targets per game. Jefferson, we'll talk about Tyreek in a little bit. Jefferson is not quite analytically as good as Brandon Ayuk, but the volume is too good. He's currently about as good of an apex predator as you can find, but not quite all the way there. Okay, just earned the like. Thank you, Dave. Took a minute there, but I'm glad we finally earned it. If that's what it takes. I'll be patronizing to anybody who comes in whenever you guys want. Kadarius Toney. God, why are there so many receivers? Kadarius Toney still at a negative 0.7 EPA per target. That's not great. He was a 0.3 EPA per target guy last year, so I do expect positive regression for him. Getting 1 rush per game, that's okay too. 1 red zone target per game, 0.5 red zone rushes per game. It's good usage for Kadarius Toney, but he stinks right now. I think he's got similar usage to Garrett Wilson, but is playing worse. Let's put him right here. Crazy to me that Kendrick Bourne was undrafted all summer. Only have a dozen or shares, but he's looking great so far. Let's talk Kendrick Bourne, because I don't think he's actually as great as some may think. Oh, I spelled it wrong. That's why. Yeah, so Kendrick Bourne getting the volume, but still negative 0.5 EPA per target. 10 targets per game, though, but only catching 5 of them. 2.5 deep targets per game. Only 0.5 of them are catchable. So he's getting all this Mac Jones usage, but he's not very good with it. So I don't love guys like that for the most part. I don't think Kendrick Bourne is actually on this list, unless I'm missing him. Oh, here he is. Here's Kendrick Bourne. Let's grab his dumbass. Good spot, but really not as good as these guys because it's so much less efficient for that much target share. I think he kind of goes like here. I think that's about right. So we're saying 10 targets per game. So he's basically like DeAndre Hopkins. Downfield DeAndre Hopkins is the best way to look at Kendrick Bourne. Yeah, problem is the Patriots stink. I think that's about right. Bourne dropped a deep throw this week. That was very catchable. That's the issue. It's like he's not that good. I dropped Bourne for 2 this morning. I'm in the cool club now. Sick, man. That's a really cool move, Rush. I love what you're doing with that move. That's going to be really awesome for your team. I think that bodes well. Keenan Allen. I hope Rush listened to the previous speech that we're giving that one, so now he knows what that means. But even if he didn't, then he feels good about himself. I think that's the win-win. I love this strategy for the either-or kind of questions moving forward. Keenan Allen, 0.7. Keenan Allen's a fucking monster, man. 0.75 EPA per target, 10.5 targets per game. He's catching 8 of them. That's going to come down, but still really good. 1.5 deep targets per game, catching 1 of them. He's catching all the catchable balls. 0.5 red zone rushes, 0.5 red zone targets for Keenan Allen. He's an apex predator kind of dude. He's actually better than Jefferson, but the usage is not quite as good. Keenan Allen, hallowed ground for Keenan Allen. All right. Marquise Brown. I'm not doing Boutte. I just don't think Boutte is really a dude yet. 0.1 for Marquise Brown EPA per target, getting 8 intended touches per game. 7.5 of them are targets that have that 1 rush in week 1. He's actually looks like he's getting some red zone usage too. 1.5 red zone targets per game. This is not bad usage for Marquise Brown. He's not great. He's just like kind of okay. But I think for right now, he's kind of in this Pickens tier. So Marquise Brown goes there. It's okay, Rush, man. You're good. You're good. I appreciate you being here either way. You just missed the bit where if anybody talks about their fantasy team or asks an either or question, I'm just gonna go, that's awesome, man. Good for you. And I'm just gonna so that's what you're getting as the first rollout of that new strategy. Marvin Mims. The usage is so poor in terms of the overall volume. 3 intended touches per game for Marvin Mims, but he has a 1.97 EPA per target. He has converted his 1 deep target for a touchdown. Mims has got to get more work, but he is theoretically this Jalen Hyatt kind of dude. Slightly more usage than Jalen Hyatt, slightly better than Jalen Hyatt. There we go. There goes Mims. Gallup, useless, negative 0.35 EPA per target, 2 targets per game. That's really bad, man. He is a worse version of Brandon Cook. He goes, actually, you can make the case that he goes all the way down here. I don't think Gallup deserves, he's not this bad, but man, Michael Gallup, that's not good. Pittman, let's talk about Michael Pittman. This makes me sad. Slightly negative EPA for Michael Pittman, negative 0.01 EPA, but getting 11.5 targets per game. The air yards are not great, 66. Still have to see AR in particular be able to stretch downfield. But yeah, I think that Pittman, to me, still love the volume. Think he's going to have better days, but he's basically a less explosive Calvin Ridley. The good news is that kind of puts him in Jamar Chase territory, but I think slightly worse spot than Jamar Chase. That's where Pittman goes. Michael Thomas. 0.26 EPA per target. So he is the same dude he was before. 8.5 intended touches per game, 6 catches per game right now, getting 1 deep target per game as well, 2 red zone targets. So Michael Thomas, 2 red zone targets per game, to be clear. So he is going to have better days. Man, Michael Thomas, that's a nice overall profile for him. He's in this Pickens range too. I think a little bit behind Pittman in terms of the spot. Michael Thomas, he's going to have weeks. He's not Olave. Olave's now the alpha there, but he's got merits. That's a really good series of numbers there for Michael Thomas. Mike Williams, 0.2 EPA per target, 9.5 intended touches per game. He also got a rush. What are they doing? on the Chargers. Why are they giving Keenan Allen and Mike Williams rushes? Either way, though, he did get a rush overall this year. And 1.5 deep targets per game for Mike Williams. Hasn't converted any of them, so he's got a negative 0.6 EPA. Still an okay spot. Definitely not anywhere close to Keenan Allen. I think he's more of a Jacoby Myers kind of guy. I'll put him actually pretty much right next to Jacoby Myers. Yeah, pretty much the same spot, honestly. Mike Williams goes there. DPJ was way too lonely out there. Thanks, Gallup. Yeah, there are not a lot of guys standing out as like purely terrible players with purely terrible spots. So I'm glad that those two can at least give us somebody to put in that range. Nico Collins is fucking smashing right now. 0.8 EPA per target, 10 targets per game, 137 air yards per game, 1.5 deep targets per game, 0.5 of which are catchable. So that should come up a little bit. 0.5 red zone targets per game. I guess it's the one spot that could get better. This is, I'm shocked. I am shocked. He's Keenan Allen. He's basically Keenan Allen. Less deep targets, so slightly less good spot. Nico Collins, based on everything right here, is currently one of the top 5 receivers in the league. You're not going to hear anybody else say that in fantasy football rankings videos. Nico Collins, I'll say it again, is currently a top 5 receiver in this league with the usage he has and how he's playing with it. Does that hold? I don't know, but I believe CJ Stroud, I've said this since January, that he was going to create value for somebody on an NFL team. We didn't know where he was going to go. Nico Collins is the benefit of CJ Stroud's greatness and his ability to create good opportunities for his receivers. I don't think you trade for Nico now unless he's part of an offer for a stud you really want to cut bait on. Chris Godwin, you could trade for Nico. DK Metcalf, I wouldn't hate being a part of a trade for Nico. If you can squeeze value out of somebody and get Nico, get Nico. If you're going to trade Justin Jefferson for Nico, don't do that. This is batshit usage for Nico Collins. He is, and also a testament too, like Nico was not this guy numerically in the previous seasons. For him to be doing this, that just all speaks to new offensive system, new QB that can give a receiver a fresh coat of paint. And it also just cements the fact that so many of these guys are just situational opportunities. Like, would Michael Gallup be Nico Collins in the same situation? He might be, but because he's in his situation, that's where we get superior players in great spots. You want great players in great spots. Nico's doing both. So give that man his fucking flowers. Nico Collins, wish I had more of him. Odell is dating Kim Kardashian. So great spot. Odell playing actually pretty well. 0.6 EPA per target, only 3.5 intended touches per game, though. So that's pretty poor usage. But again, great spot for the Kim Kardashian thing. But this is really shitty usage. But he's playing well with it. So he's actually in this tier, I think. Saw the Texans. Wait, you're talking about the Texans? Play live at Gillette Stadium against the Pats, and Dell was going off. Tweet out that night to draft Stroud, Nico, and Dell. There you go, Johnny Football. Take your victory lap. Good job by you. Though honestly, that was teetering close, Johnny, to being really fucking cool, man. But no, Johnny, I know, is tweeting out a lot of takes on his Twitter handle, so he gets some flowers for himself. Quentin Johnston, poor opportunity. Boy, oh no, this makes me sad. Quentin Johnston's got to go in the bottom left. 0.5 EPA per target, 2.5 targets per game. Just playing 16 snaps. He's only gotten half a deep target per game, so he's gotten 1 so far. This is a bad rollout for Quentin Johnston. Oh no. Oh no. Oh, that hurts. Here he goes. Dating Kim Kardashian, great spot. I mean, hard to argue with anytime you can fuck somebody who vaguely feel like fucking your couch. These are the kind of things we could say 2 hours and 12 minutes in. Rashee Rice, spots getting worse. Not a great follow-up for him. Still 0.34 EPA per target, 16 snaps per game. That's not helpful. Better version. Let's just make this one fast. Rashee Rice, better version of what Quentin Johnston's going to. Not a great spot. Here we go. Bateman. What's Rashad Bateman doing? 0.3 EPA per target, 3 targets per game, though. He is basically, again, exact same thing as Odell Beckham, but he's not dating Kim Kardashian. So he gets a slightly worse spot and slightly worse as a superior player. That goes there. Sky Moore, if his numbers leveled out, had a good week too. Still negative 0.14 EPA per target, 4.5 intended touches per game. 2 of them are actually converting into a touch. He is getting targeted downfield 1.5 times per game and also averaging 1 red zone target per game. I think that puts him in this Juju, Brandon Cooks area. So that's where Sky Moore goes. Diggs, I love, though he did not have a great week 2. Diggs still basically flat with where he was last year. 0.35 EPA per target, 10 targets per game on 63 snaps, getting 1.5. Is that right? No, that's Nico. Fucking Nico making it look like Diggs' numbers are better because they're next to each other. Diggs is getting 0.5 deep targets per game, is not converted 1, is getting 2 red zone targets per game. So that's really good usage for him. He's Jefferson adjacent right now. Better spot theoretically than Nico. Not quite as good of a player with what they've done this year, but Diggs will hold over the course of a year where Nico, I think, is going to come down a little bit more. Nico can't maintain a 0.79 EPA per target with that much of a target share. Tank Dell, 0.2 EPA per target, playing 51.5 snaps. That is a very good sign. 22% target per out run rate, getting half a deep target per game. Not avoiding tackles as well as I would have thought. Yeah, 10% avoided tackle rate when catching a pass for Tank Dell. Better version of Brandon Cooks, I think, is where we're going with this one. There goes Tank Dell. And I think we're nearing the end here. T. Higgins, going to get better. Negative 0.2 EPA per target. He was a 0.3 guy last year, so that should positively regress. He is getting 10 targets per game, though, so that's actually more than Jamar Chase so far. That bodes well for him. Getting 2 deep targets per game, that also bodes well for him. Has only actually had 0.5 of those per game catchable, so it's not really on him that he's not converting those. But he does have a negative 1 EPA per target, being targeted 20-plus air yards. So good spot for Higgins. Pretty poor performance. Unfortunately, that puts him in the Hopkins tier, but still good spot. 10 targets for T. Higgins. Don't think you can argue that. Shout out Rushman. I'm going to start this show from the start and kill 2 hours. You all take care. Shout out Rushman. You're moving up my power rankings the more you chat. I appreciate you. Terry McLaurin. Let's go. Now I'm like, is this going to be under 3 hours? We'll speed run through tight ends. That's always the one we can make up some time on. Terry McLaurin playing better than Jahan Dotson. 0.2 EPA per target on 58.5 snaps per game. 33 of those are routes run. Not getting deep targets very much, though. They just are not trusted in Howell to turn it loose, which is not going to help out McLaurin. McLaurin getting 0.5 deep targets per game. Good for a 2.4 EPA. So there we go. McLaurin. So we had Dotson over here. I think McLaurin's the inverse where he's playing pretty well. Not a great spot still, though. So these guys are kind of inverted there. Where just Dotson, tough start for Dotson. Keep saying that. Burks. 0.36 EPA per target for Burks, only getting 4 per game, though. Actually, that's 4 intended touches. He did get half of a rush per game as well. Yeah, Burks, just no role to speak of here, but he's doing the best he can with it. 0.5 red zone targets per game as well. You sons of bitches. Yeah, baby Santa. If you want to drop your question in, have no fear. I will ask it. I will answer it rather when I get a second here. Traylon Burks. Playing well, not a lot of usage. I think that kind of puts him in this Bateman Beckham tier, but he's also not having sex with Kim Kardashian, so that's where he goes. Trey Palmer. Palmer's usage has been kind of nothing. That's Josh Palmer. Josh Palmer also looking pretty shitty. Trey Palmer, pretty good. 0.3 EPA per target, only getting 2.5 targets, though. Palmer, just not enough usage to matter, but playing well with it, so he goes in this tier. Hyatt, adjacent. Bateman. Actually, should be closer to Bateman, I think. There we go. Tyler Boyd. Got to get all the Tylers out of the way. Tyler Boyd, 0.32 EPA per target. So technically the best EPA per target player in the Bengals right now. 51 snaps per game, 5.5 intended touches per game. He is getting no deep targets per game, 24 air yards per game. So that hurts the role quite a bit. Half a red zone target for Tyler Boyd. Better version of Brandon Cooks is where Tyler Boyd goes right now. Tyler Lockett. 0.25 EPA per target for Tyler Lockett and 7.5 intended touches per game, 53 snaps. 1 deep shot, has not converted on the deep shots yet per game. 2.5 red zone targets. So he's actually out earning DK Metcalf at red zone targets, which is a surprise just given the size and the profile of these guys. So good usage. Lockett, slightly better Mike Williams. That's where Lockett goes. Tyreek Hill. Tyreek down in week 2, absolutely. Where clearly New England sold out to stop him as best they could. Tyreek, 0.47 EPA per target on 49 snaps, 12 targets per game. I mean, yeah, all looks good for Tyreek. 173 air yards per game. That is going to lead to some fucking big days. 3.5 deep targets per game for Tyreek. That also is going to lead to some big days. 2.5 red zone targets, 1.5 per game inside the 5-yard line. All right, so Tyreek, I think still got to be the apex predator around here. He's in that Jefferson, Nico, Diggs range. He's not quite as good per touch as Brandon Ayuk has been, but there we go. Appreciate you. Wondering if I should trade James Conner and Godwin and Kirk if I have for just. I think it sounds like a sick trade, man. I think you got to go for it. Wan'Dale Robinson. Wan'Dale doing nothing. We don't have to rank him. Zay Flowers certainly came down in week 2, as I had warned about in this very video, because of the fact that Mark Andrews is back out there. So Zay Flowers, 0.18 EPA per target, down to 9 to 10 touches per game on 8 touches per game. Zay feasting downfield. 2 deep targets per game, 1.5 of them are catchable. He's catching them all at a 1.1 EPA for it. Yeah, I think Zay Flowers still looks pretty good. 2.5 red zone targets per game, 1 red zone rush per game for Zay Flowers. So that's pretty good usage. He's hanging in there usage-wise. Still going to come down, I think, overall. Not Nico level. I think he's like in this Mike Thomas range. Zay's hanging in. Zay's hanging in. All right. That's every receiver, right? These are all just repeats. Okay. All right. On to the final part of our journey. On to the tight ends, the least fun part here. We have to hit them. And of course, we are in between positions, so I wouldn't be doing my job here if I didn't throw in the plug. Please subscribe down below. Nobody loves answering your trade questions. Nobody loves talking about your redraft leagues more than your pal Chris Spags. So please subscribe down below. Splash play on the march to 3,000 subs. I put in more effort into these videos than most people you will find. Maybe not in the editing part, but in terms of the actual act of doing the video, of going through the motions, of showing up, of clocking in and knowing ball. That's what we do here on Splash Play. So please subscribe. And now the tight ends. Now these vagrants, these pieces of shit we call tight ends. Let's rank a few of them, huh? All right. Travis Kelce, not performing too efficiently. Negative 0.1 EPA per target, but does lead the tight ends with 9 to 10 touches per game. Only converted 4 of them. He is in a great spot, but he's not playing that well yet. So we'll just put him in the middle here. There we go. Travis Kelce. This is like the epilogue. Tight ends are unequivocally the epilogue here. It's TE, the epilogue. That's how that works out. Fuck it. I'm going to just one-liner sound bites here. K. Dotton, 0.04 EPA per target, 4.5 per game, 67.5 snaps. Is getting half a red zone target per game. That's okay usage for a tight end. But he's just kind of whatever. K. Dotton goes here. Should I trade Latavius Gore for Frank Murray? That sounds like a really sick trade, man. I think you can crush it with that. So your team is going to look a lot better for that trade. You should absolutely take it. Chig Okonkwo, regressing hardcore now that he's getting a little more work. Negative 0.06 EPA per target, 48.5 snaps per game, 3 targets. That is shitty work, even by tight end standards. He is getting no red zone work. Mid spot, mid player. Chig unfortunately goes here. Honestly, you can make the case a lot of these tight ends should go there, but that's neither here nor there. Cole Kmet, 0.32 EPA per target on 6.5 targets per game. That actually is pretty good and pretty good usage. Cole Kmet, you're getting ranked there, and I won't explain further. No further questions. These are tight ends. Dallas Goedert. What are you doing, Dallas? Dallas Goedert is what he's doing is playing like shit so far this year. Negative 0.44 EPA per target, 67.5 snaps per game. That bodes well, but only 4 intended touches per game. Target per route run down to 14%. So it feels like Goddard is coming down because Devontae is coming up. And then the run game too coming up. Oh, that might not be great for Dallas Goedert shares. This is a piss poor effort from a player getting mid-tier usage. Dallas Goedert goes there. Dalton Schultz. Tight end is the hostage. We got to do it. I know it matters still, but fuck, it really is when all the steam has left my sails and all the wind has left my sails. And then we're here doing this. Dalton Schultz stinks, negative 0.4 EPA per target on 5.5, is playing a lot of snaps, but is not clearly the apple of CJ Stroud's eye. Stinky player. Okay opportunity. He and Goddard, honestly, I guess he's playing a little better than Goddard right now. That's where Dalton Schultz goes. Dalton Kincaid, 0.2 EPA per target on 5 targets per game, playing 51 snaps, getting 1 red zone target per game. That's actually pretty okay. He is a slightly better version of Cade Otton, slightly worse version, or slightly worse spot rather than Cole Kmet, I think is the way to look at that. Darren Waller. Waller had a pretty good game. He's looking pretty good so far. 0.4 EPA per target, 6.5 intended touches per game for him. Not getting any red zone work, which surprises me. No, 1 red zone target overall. All right. Yeah, Waller playing well. I think Waller's the best so far in terms of the opportunity and also his play. So make him a slightly better version of Cole Kmet. Njoku, more like Njoker. How he's playing. David Njoku, negative 0.02 EPA per target, 4 targets per game. Playing a lot of snaps at 64, but Deshaun is killing everybody on this team. Ugh. I think he's a little worse usage than Schultz and Goddard, but a slightly better player so far. Njoku goes there. Knox. Dawson Knox, not as good as Dalton Kincaid, negative 0.3 EPA per target on his 4.5 targets, did convert some of his red zone targets. He's getting 1.5 per game in the red zone. He's getting 1 per game inside the 5-yard line. Oh, Darnell Washington. I didn't even mean to move you, but I guess Darnell just goes down there. Dawson Knox, worse player, better. Same spot to Kincaid, inverse to Dalton Kincaid. That's where he's going to go. Kittle, 0.16 EPA per target, 4.5. Why is every tight end is just fucking 4 targets? This is the worst exercise ever. Kittle, I think a slightly better spot than Dalton Kincaid. Slightly worse right now than Cole Kmet as a player and as a spot. There we go. Tight end is the Antonio Gibson / Cherry of positions. Tight ends are very important. What you want your tight end is to do a lot of blocking. You don't want him to run any routes. You just want to show that he's a guy that can really press that line. That's what Jerry likes to see at tight end at the very least. The Dalvin Cook of tight ends. Gerald Everett. What's this fucker doing? Gerald Everett looking great. 0.7 EPA per target. 3 targets per game. Obviously not great. Red zone usage, not that great. 0.5 per game. All right, honestly, he's the best player analytically right now. Just the usage is kind of whatever. Here we go. Gerald Everett. Get your flowers, Gerald Everett. Hunter Henry. This should be an interesting one. Hunter Henry might go top right corner. We'll see. Fuck, Hunter Henry's it. Hunter Henry is that dude. 0.7 EPA per target on 6.5 targets per game, playing 65.5 snaps per game. 1 red zone target per game as well for Hunter Henry. Converted that into a touchdown too. Not getting much in the way of deep shots, so that's one thing that could make him a slightly better spot. But this is not as good of a spot as Travis Kelce, but he is playing as well as Gerald Everett with a lot more volume. That's where Hunter Henry goes. Hunter Henry fans, Hunter Henry drafters, take your victory lap once again. He is currently looking like the best tight end play in fantasy. We'll see if that holds. Juwan Johnson playing like shit. Negative 0.6 EPA per target, 4 targets per game. Stinky, stinky, stinky. Middle tier in usage, though. Stinky effort by Juwan Johnson. I know there are a lot of fans of him out there. He's not shown it so far. Kyle Pitts. 0.25 EPA per target. 4 targets per game, catching 2 of them, getting 0.5 deep targets per game as well, and 0.5 red zone targets, all of which are within the 5-yard line. So Kyle Pitts, Njoku tier usage, better player with it. Not what you want to see for Kyle Pitts. Musgrave, 0.3 EPA per target, getting one deep target per game. Half of them have been catchable, and he has caught the catchable ones. He is getting 0.5 red zone targets per game. Feels like he should get more in the red zone given how big he is, but he is purely a downfield threat. I think he'll have a little more upside when Christian Watson gets back in because he needs something to open up for him a little bit more, and clearly Romeo Doubs and Jaden Reed and A.J. Dillon are not the ones doing that. So Musgrave, analytically playing better than these guys right now. Usage roughly equivalent. I think that's where Dallas Goedert goes, or that's where Luke Musgrave goes, right next to Dalton Kincaid, and the inverse of Dallas Goedert is what I was thinking. Andrews, not going to rank Schumacher. Schumacher caught a touchdown, probably someone to watch, but Schumacher is not somebody I think is worth the time right now. Mark Andrews, hot start, 0.35 EPA per target, 8 targets in that game. Also had 1 red zone target, 1 target inside the 5-yard line. Mark Andrews looking pretty good. Usage, pretty good. Analytically, not quite as good as Hunter Henry. So we're going to put him behind Travis Kelce in terms of a great spot, behind Hunter Henry in terms of the overall usage. He should actually be next to Waller. So Henry's still the best overall, but Andrews not too far behind, not too far off. Michael Mayer, you're doing fucking nothing, right? Michael Mayer's not even involved. Playing 22.5 snaps per game, but Mayer, I'm not even going to put on the board. All these guys feel like, honestly, Freiermuth, I guess, can go on the board. He's getting nothing, though, right? Yeah, Freiermuth, 2.5 targets per game, -1 EPA per target. This is actually terrible. This is terrible. Freiermuth could go over Darnell Washington. That is a terrible start for Freiermuth. I'll fucking rank Noah Fant. Noah Fant, 0.6 EPA per target, 2 targets per game. Fuck me. What stupid play. Here you go. Noah Fant, playing great. No opportunity. Bad spot. Laporta, 0.26 EPA per target, 5.5 targets per game on 56 snaps. Red zone usage, not there. 1.5 red zone targets per game. Laporta's got to be a little bit better than Dalton Kincaid here. Yeah, I think he goes in this Kittle Musgrave range. Not quite Waller, not quite Kmet, and definitely not Andrews and Hunter Henry yet. Hawkinson. Oh, Hawkinson might be the top right corner. Let's see what he's actually doing. Yeah, Hawkinson is it. 0.5 EPA per target, 8.5 targets per game, 1.5 red zone targets per game, 1 inside the 5-yard line per game. He's getting half a deep target as well. Hawkinson is your tight end apex predator. There that is. And Trey McBride is getting fucking lapped by Zach Ertz, which you never want to see. McBride, though, 0.54 EPA per target, 2.5 targets per game. We'll roll McBride into Ertz into one player. Zach Ertz is getting 9 targets per game, so he's getting tremendous usage. But Zach Ertz, of course, he's an older player. He sucks with his usage, -0.15 EPA per target for Zach Ertz. So the combined Trey McBride, Zach Ertz, really good usage, but they're just kind of in here. So that's McBride and Ertz combined. And of course, Kelsey's going to have better days. Kelsey, you'd expect. We'll get closer to Andrews, but there we go. There are your SPAGS rankings. Da, 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 da. We did it, guys. 2.5 hours. We fucking ranked them all. We caught them all. So please reward me. Please give me a pat on the head. Tell me how great my team is by subscribing down below, by hitting the like button, by leaving a comment if you watch after the fact. If you have any things you want to nitpick about where I rank, guys, ask me about it in the comments. I don't care. I'm happy to rebut. I'm happy to discuss. I'm happy to chat always. And of course, if you just want to ask me about, hey, should I trade this guy? Should I drop this guy? What should I do? Just know that whatever you do, it's a sick fucking move, man. Just do it. Just do it. Just act off your instincts. Just believe. Follow me at Chris Spags. Follow the show at Splash Play Pod. And of course, go check out probably.com. Go check it out. That is my baby. All the love that I put into this, I put 1.5 years of love into Probably. So Imagine how great that must be. So please bet smart, lose less money. Go to probably.com. Of course, top market probabilities from around the world. We grade them out, we give them to you, and then you can grade out live sportsbook opportunities. Take ones, make better bets from the comfort of the toilet. That is the goal of probably.com. So please go check that out. Check it out while it's free because we are putting the paywall live. Shout out to the chat. Tyler joining here late. Yes, let's go. It was okay. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you all for hanging out with me. Come back tomorrow. Showdown. That'll be a short video. So come join me. Thursday Night Football Showdown. I don't even know what the game is yet, but we'll know. And we'll, of course, make some lineups here live on stream. Hand-built, optimizer, simulations. We got it all here on Splash Play. Love you all for hanging out with me, especially if you watch this entire video. See you guys tomorrow. Enjoy your days. And, of course, good luck. Bye.